Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Always glad to have you with us. Our show today and every day is brought to you by our friends over at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. Hopefully, you've had an opportunity to swing by, maybe even on this beautiful Easter weekend. Got in there, grabbed some of the delicious food, maybe a craft cocktail, maybe a cold draft, whatever. Final Four basketball, NHL hockey, red-hot Utah Mammoth team. You got baseball underway. Maybe you were down there to watch regional gymnastics. A point of pain that we're going to get to on the show today. Big Willie's hooks you up. Just go down, tell them that OC sent you. They'll take extra special good care of you. 1717 South Main. Ari Temkin joins us on Mondays. We're happy to have him this Monday as well. Everett Gray to talk a little hoop as well. Tom Callahan is going to join us to talk about the aforementioned Utah Mammoth. You can check out your brackets at the ESPN $700 million bracket challenge. Mine is, I was hoping that Arizona would help me out by making at least two the title game because I had them in the title game in my bracket. Arizona just stunk it up in a disgustingly lopsided Final Four matchup with Michigan. But you can always check out your bracket before the challenge closes at ESPN700sports.com.
We're gonna have to update later, OC. If there's a chance if UConn wins, someone wins our group, or if Michigan wins, which I think it's a safe assumption Michigan's going to win this game, as dominant as they've been, who wins our group, and they're going to have to update that later, as this is your last chance to track your bracket because it's national championship game tonight.
Man, I was actually, I don't know why, man, Bryce Larson and Adrian Denny are currently tied for first. Okay? So at least one of the sports guys. Oh, but he's got Michigan winning. Bryce does. Let's see what Adrian's got. Smitty was. Ooh, we might have a tie for first at the end of this thing, James. They both have Michigan winning it all.
And I believe they both had Duke in the national championship game. So this might end up being a tie for first in our ESPN 700 staff and guests group here. Smitty had
Houston beating Arizona in the national championship game.
Yeah, Smitty doesn't have a chance then. And then our guy John Watkins from John and Chantel on Mix 105.1, he had Florida winning like I did, so he was out a long time.
I feel better because Smitty had the same national championship game and result as I did. I had Houston beating Arizona in the national championship game in my bracket. Here's the thing, Arizona, and look, you have to give credit to Michigan and Yaxel Landeborg for playing through obvious pain. He was in bad shape for a lot of that game. You could easily, if you're Dusty May, you could easily make an executive decision when you're up consistently 15, 17, 14, 13, 19. When you're going on these runs and you're just staving off any rally by Arizona, you could have seen him make a decision to just, you know what, let's not worry about Yaxel. Let's not let him play for the rest of this game. We could probably win without him. But there's at least some connection there still to what makes NCAA basketball and specifically Final Four basketball great. There's at least some remembrance. There's some acknowledgement of like, you know what? These kids are in their early 20s. Their bodies are built for recovery. And we may never pass this way again. I'm not going to take away a kid's opportunity to have that kind of a game, to put on a gritty performance and help us go out and win this thing and punch a ticket to the national championship game. I mean, like the coaches, the modern coach's handbook is just like, oh, someone grimaces in a basketball game, sit them down. There's pain evident. Sit them down. Something's going to happen. Every tissue in his body is going to explode. Don't let him hurt. Don't let him feel any discomfort. But thankfully, if you're a Michigan fan, like thankfully, if you're on the Michigan side of the Big Ten side of this, you're looking at it and you're like, nice. Let the kid play through it, establish his own legend, write his own book, carve his name in the stone of those hallowed halls. It's pretty cool to see that happen in a Final Four game. If you're Arizona, I mean, we were celebrating going into the weekend. Hey, Tommy Lloyd said no to North Carolina. Eat it, Tar Heels. The Big 12 is back. We got a new blood, blue blood. Arizona's going to punch their ticket to a national championship. Let's go. Everyone, at least in our neighborhood, everyone felt pretty good about that possibility, except Arizona Wildcat basketball players.
In Michigan, this is 5 straight games, so there's 6 total NCAA tournament games if you make it to the national championship game, right? All 5 of their games so far, they've scored over 90, and they've won by at least, I think, 18 points on Saturday might have been their closest game. Like, they've been, and that's, like you said, Lindenberg has barely played that game, their best player. So, yeah, I don't have much confidence in UConn tonight. I would love for UConn to win, but they have an injury of their own. One of their starting guards, Solo Ball, I believe, is out, or at least questionable, and that's a big deal for them. It's not as big a deal as Terrace Reed being out. The only way I see UConn winning is if Terrace Reed is the load that he's been down low all tournament, and he just snatches up every rebound, every miss on their end of the floor, and turns it into second chance points, dominates in the post like he has for just about every game this tournament. If that's the case, UConn's got a great chance. But even with that, I don't know how you beat this Michigan team.
Well, they share the ball well. They rebound well, although Arizona actually beat them on the boards. But they're a wagon right now. Michigan, like you said, their tournament resume is going to put them in the conversation if they can cap it off tonight as one of the most dominant college basketball teams, one of the maybe most impressive national champions in the history of the sport. I'm really, really curious to know, especially in Michigan lore, right? Because you have, the Fab Five was a cultural moment. It was just as much about who they were as people rather than just players, right?
And the fact of how young they were back then, you did not start 5 freshmen, and if you did start multiple freshmen, you did not get that far in the NCAA tournament if you made the tournament at all. They made back-to-back national championship games starting freshmen and sophomores.
And they, everything about that was the way they wore their baggy shorts. It was the oversized jerseys. It was the sort of brash personality of these young, because we're talking about an era where, like you said, it was unprecedented to have that many young guys. And if you were going to be a young player in those days who got to start, who got to be out there, you were deferential. You know what I mean? You were there. You were on the floor, but you're still kind of waiting your turn. And those guys were not there to take part. They were there to take over. And it was something that a lot of traditionalists were like, I don't know if we love this. And the young people, I remember elementary school, whatever that was, 4th, 5th grade version of me, and they had 877-353-0700. If you ever owned the Looney Tunes University of Michigan crisscross collab gear, what a strange Venn diagram that was. James, you were far too young to remember this, but there was this brief and blessed time in the early 90s where the Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, Tasmanian Devil, all these guys, they were popping up on gear, right? On apparel, dressed as hip-hop personalities. And crisscross was a phenomenon at the time. Have you ever even heard jump?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They were a phenomenon in their one-hit wonder days, right? And they wore their clothes backwards.
Oh, right.
So
crisscross.
These T-shirts were printed with Bugs Bunny, Tasmanian Devil, standing next to each other in baggy backwards gear, and somehow the University of Michigan Wolverines were kind of thrown into that recipe because they were also doing like the hip hop culture thing. So you could you could get yourself this like trifecta gear of Looney Tunes, wearing baggy backwards clothes on your baggy t-shirt, and some of those were Michigan gear.
I did a Google search. I found it. You can buy these shirts. You can buy, I don't know if they're shirts from that era or shirts that have been made recently.
Yeah,
in homage to that.
Someone just dug up the old screen print.
But yeah, they're wearing, it's Bugs with the backwards hat, Taz with the backwards hat, and they got baseball jerseys and their pants on backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I mean,
I had no idea that was a thing, and I had no idea there was a connection to the Fab Five.
It was just like this very strange time where all of it was just being smashed together. It was like, I think if I'm being honest, my mental picture of it is there's a bunch of people working in like the apparel buyers department for certain stores. They're just like, hey, the young kids, they love the hip hop culture stuff these days, but they also still are kids and they love Bugs Bunny still, and Space Jam's coming out, and they're just like, okay.
I'm sure by that time, that was only a couple years before Space Jam was released. I'm sure they were already promoting it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just like, okay, how do we capture, and it's just like a bunch of like dudes that, my age and older, like white dudes that have never heard of any of this crisscross stuff, and they're just like kind of frowning at the Fab Five, and they're just like, well, the kids like it though. Let's put it all together, smash it up, throw it on a t-shirt, and it worked. My Willow Canyon Elementary, shout out fellow Wildcats. You could not make it out on the playground one day without seeing at least one of these shirts on any given day.
Kids your age were wearing them in elementary school. That was the thing. That's
Sandy, amazing. Utah kids were down with the backwards baggy Bugs Bunny stuff.
And yeah, the Fab Five was, you're totally right. They were as much a basketball phenomenon or cultural phenomenon as they were a basketball phenomenon. And here's the thing about Michigan basketball history in that era. They had won their only national championship in '89 with Glenn Rice, who himself was quite a basketball phenomenon, right? In college and then into the NBA for a while throughout the 90s. And also a guy that was looked at as like, that guy's really cool. But then these five freshmen, Chris Webber, Jalen Rose in particular, they took it to a whole other level. They are known as they're probably known as like the historic face of Michigan basketball. And they didn't win a title like Glenn Rice's team did in '89.
They didn't win a title. That's why I said, before I went on a crazy aside, this Michigan basketball team has a really excellent opportunity tonight to win a national championship, and to do it on one of the most dominant runs we have seen through tournament basketball. Where will that put them? I mean, it's a different era, right? You're not as tied, even if you're incredibly successful, you're not as tied to your university, no matter who you are, as you used to be. I mean, Jalen Rose and Chris Webber have made entire careers out of that seed that was planted when they were in the Fab Five.
It's incredible because they were really good basketball players, right? And they played on really good teams. Jalen Rose's team almost beat the 2000 Lakers in the NBA championship with the Pacers, right? And he was probably the second or third best scorer on that team. Chris Webber was on those great Sacramento Kings teams that almost beat the Lakers in the early 2000s. And yet, I think if you ask people of any age that have even young people who have way younger than us who have looked up Chris Webber and Jalen Rose, I think if you asked anyone, what do you know them for? It's Fab Five. Like that's how incredible that story is. And growing up, I was months old and a year old when the Fab Five went on their runs when Chris Webber and Jalen Rose were on the same team at Michigan. So I have no memory of that, obviously, but I remembered them as NBA players when I was in elementary school. But as I've gotten older and watched things, even from that point on, I almost remember them as Michigan Wolverines, even though I wasn't even I was barely born.
That's right. So what will it do? What can it do for these current modern Michigan players that they just went out there and embarrassed an Arizona Wildcats team that how many pundits did we hear all year long and even have on our show saying Arizona's been the best team in the country all year? Yeah, they've rotated in and out of that top ranking, and they've had their runs and they've had their downs, but Arizona's the best team in the country. Michigan made them look bad. And I know Arizona did look bad themselves. They did some of that to themselves, not sharing the ball at all. They finished the game, by the way, Arizona did, with 5 assisted baskets. 5 in an entire college hoops game. 5 times a pass led to points. That is embarrassing. If you're the coach, if you're the players, it's a bad situation. And obviously, at the end of a basketball season, only one team gets to really, truly celebrate. There's only going to be one national championship every year. One national champion, every year. And this year it looks like it might be Michigan. And if it's not, and it's UConn, what a wild story that one's going to be. if it's, UConn has now had back-to-back games where you've had some, Mullins has come up pretty clutch. Obviously, the Elite Eight 2 Final Four game was rife with storylines at the end because of the head hug. That's what we're calling it and whatnot.
The head hug.
By the way, if you're watching on YouTube right now, like James, I have found vintage Michigan Looney Tunes crew neck sweatshirt. Unfortunately, on this particular website, it is currently sold out. I think we're going to have to go the eBay route on this thing. But James, I don't know if you can watch on the YouTube. I'm going to put this up on the camera so people can see exactly what I'm talking about. That is Bugs Bunny and the Tasmanian Devil in baggy Michigan gear. They have backwards hats. They have pierced ears, and they are as hip-hop as you can be when you're a cartoon. Michigan. Specifically, the Wolverines and the Looney Tunes were hot sellers back in the day.
I don't think even if Michigan wins tonight, it sounds like both of us expect that to happen, and they score 90-plus points again, and they win by double digits again, even if it's just by 10 or 12 points, not by 18 to 30 points like we've seen, right? Even if it's just barely double digits, but they score over 90, I still don't think this team eclipses the Fab Five in Michigan lore. Even though, like you said, this is going to go down, if that happens, as one of the most dominant NCAA tournament runs ever. The other one I can think of in my lifetime is the 2009 North Carolina team, Tyler Hansbrough's senior year. They were Ty Lawson, Wayne Ellington came back when they could have went to the NBA. Tyler Hansbrough could have went to the NBA too, but he obviously would have been a first-round pick like he was, but he didn't have the same kind of NBA upside that the other two had. So it was way more surprising that those two came back, and they showed they didn't score 90 in every game, but they scored like 85 plus every game and won by double digits every time. That's the only one I can think of that has been this dominant in my lifetime, and I'm probably skipping over others if you want to correct me on the text line.
Yeah, 877-353-0700. That's the best way to get engagement, is you say something that people deem to be factually incorrect. They're definitely going to come in and be like, well, actually, no, I disagree with that. And I'm totally fine, by the way, if you do that. Go ahead. So college basketball, in a way, I've really enjoyed this year's tournament, even though we started it off first weekend, and you come out of the first weekend, and a big part of the conversation is just like, oh, man, what happened to Cinderella? Cinderella's definitively dead now. We've been having that conversation for 3 or 4 years, and the fact that you did not have any mid-major schools make it into the Sweet 16, everyone's just like, oh, yeah, that stinks. And there's a part of me that mourns that version of college basketball, certainly. But if you're going to try to find a way to redeem this season or to redeem the sport in general after you lose such a foundational piece of what makes March Madness great. Well, the storylines we've gotten in these last couple weeks have at least kept the conversation going for me. Maybe not in as wholesome and fun of a way as Cinderella stories did, but I mean, what we've seen now in both women's and men's basketball, the Big Ten has definitively risen to the top of the table as a national powerhouse in revenue-producing sports. It's been happening for 3+, 4+, 5+ years in football, right? And now even the former laughingstock of the conference, Indiana, is a national power. So that has not yet happened for the SEC. Although Vanderbilt, who used to be at the bottom, is now a respectable. They still have the kind of bottom dwellers that people can laugh at if they so choose. The Big Ten is likely going to win a national championship in men's basketball. They've won 3 national championships back to back to back in college football. They have a huge presence in women's gymnastics. They have a huge presence in women's basketball. They have a huge presence in softball. The big
volleyball they've been the power too. Penn State in winning national championships. Nebraska setting attendance records.
You mentioned Penn State. Wrestling, they've always been a huge power, but now they're definitively the power. Not that people care about that one. That's not a revenue producer. But I would die to be in SEC conference meetings, university presidents, chancellors, athletic directors, coaches, sitting at SEC media days, but not in the media portion, in like the dinner the night before, in the, hey, we all just got to the hotel, come meet us in the crown room kind of a thing. I want to know what those conversations are like right now, because the stranglehold that the SEC had on college athletics in everything for the longest time has started to slip through their fingers. Their greedy, greasy Southern fingers are starting to lose that grip because legalized spending has now rewarded conferences that, let's be honest, Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State and some of these players, they were always willing to dabble in the dirty pool. But now everybody is, in a way that is above board, like BYU has done. They've elevated their status in sports. The Big Ten has found a way to do that with very successful alumni bases, incredibly lucrative NIL contracts for players, proud tradition to go along with it. And if that tug-of-war game is going to continue between the Big Ten and the SEC, which I imagine it will, the SEC now has to start thinking about how do we play from a position of disadvantage rather than a position of sincere advantage. I mean, that is, in my opinion, an under-talked about aspect of the results we're seeing in actual competition. The SEC has never had to play from behind in my lifetime. They never have. Even before, Alabama was a huge power again. It was, Florida and LSU and Auburn were big powers before Nick Saban came back and they turned the Crimson Tide back into what they are. And before Kirby Smart, who was, of course, from that same tree, turned Georgia back into the powerhouse that they were in the 80s and the early 90s. There was always somebody carrying that torch in the SEC. And for the very first time in my sports fan lifetime, the SEC is not definitively sitting in that throne in some ivory tower looking down their noses at everybody else.
I mean, they still have baseball and softball. Shit.
Great.
Shout out to those sports for them.
Which is, awesome.
Yeah.
Seriously, their dominance in softball especially, but
especially because they got Oklahoma in the conference now.
They got Oklahoma. They took that from the Big 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and if those sports have never been a big deal in college, but if they were, then you could put that on one side of the scale as just all right, this is going to help balance things out for us a little bit. But you can't.
No,
because it's baseball and softball.
You need one of the two revenue sports. You need college football and or men's basketball in order for that scale to be balanced. And like you said, especially remember this point last year, we were saying, man, SEC's a basketball conference now too. And it's like 1 year later, no SEC teams in the Final Four. I think only one made it to the Elite Eight. They got their doors blown off by this Michigan team, just like everyone else has. That was Tennessee. Yeah, it's 1 year after they announced themselves as the best basketball conference in the nation, they're like the third best. It's crazy how quickly things can change.
And UConn gets to stand there kind of like by themselves.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, what about us?
What about the Big East? Us.
What about us, you guys? And it was just like, shut up, UConn.
You guys do
you guys even play football?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do. Okay, technically you do.
What conference are you in? Never mind.
So, speaking of UConn, we did get a correction here, and I should have remembered this. That UConn team 2 years ago that won back-to-back, they were the most dominant as far as blowout fashion.
Okay.
The largest average margin of victory in the history of college basketball. So it's like them, this Michigan team, if they finish off the deal tonight against UConn, and then maybe that 2009 Carolina team that have been this dominant in my lifetime, in you and I's lifetime.
Let's see. If Michigan can pull it off tonight, if they beat UConn at the same average that they have beat everyone else, then they will be the most dominant champion in the history of the NCAA tournament.
They'll eclipse the
2023
UConn team 3 years ago, I guess.
North Carolina Tar Heels plus 20.2 points per game, their average margin of victory in the tournament. 2016 Villanova.
Oh, Nova, okay.
20.7.
Even with winning on a buzzer beater over Carolina in the championship game that year, they still had over 20 points per game. That's impressive. The rest of the games, how dominant they were.
And then that UConn team flirting with 21, and this current Michigan run is at over 21 points per game, according to.
So, okay, I wasn't that far off doing it off the top of my head there.
Also, okay, here we are again with me being bad at my job, and you read it off based on what you get. The Grok, is Grok the Google AI?
No, that's Twitter.
Okay, Grok's. What's the Google one?
Google is Gemini.
Okay.
I think.
Well, Gemini examines the Google results, and if you just read the summary they give you at the top, you can't trust it. Okay, public service announcement, because it just said that Villanova 20.7 points per game is behind UConn's 20.0 points per game.
Yeah.
Why? Why do I do this? I'm mad at myself. Sean O'Connell Show, brought to you every day by a friend over at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. Shaquille O'Neal is on the Pat McAfee Show right now, shooting hoops and just reminding everyone how incredibly gigantic he is. And Ari Temkin is going to join us next. We'll talk about the how and why of Arizona's collapse.
Real quick, gotta fit this in. OC, you have no chance of beating me in the $1 million bracket challenge. I am 2 points ahead of you, and neither of us have any teams left, so I will be 2 points better than you forever in the 2026 $1 million bracket challenge.
What are you going to do with your $1 million?
Shoot, I'm not going to win the million. I just have $1 million worth of bragging rights over you forever.
That's worth it. Worth it. Ari Temkin next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. Welcome in our good friend Ari Temkin. Big 12 today, Big 12 radio. Ari, how are you, sir?
I'm great, OC. How are you, bud?
Doing all right, man. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Big sports weekend. Easter egg hunts going on all over the place. And the Arizona Wildcats, I think, wanted to be at an Easter egg hunt instead of against these Michigan Wolverines. What happened to the Big 12's last representative in March Madness?
Yeah, and I planned on still being in Indianapolis today and tomorrow because I was pretty confident that Arizona was going to win, and obviously that did not come to fruition. In fact, game wasn't even particularly close. I think it was a couple of things. I mean, I think you can point to the freshmen and freshmen that seemed more experienced heading into this game suddenly looked like freshmen. But Arizona, I think, was able to sort of overcome their freshmen, quote unquote, all year with their depth. And, for all of the Koa Pete and Braden Burries and Ivan Karchenkov successes they had with those freshmen, they still had, Krivas and Jaden Bradley and plenty of other experienced players you thought could make up for the potential for those freshmen, but that did not happen. And so I think it's twofold. I think it was one, Michigan just ran really good offense early on. I think Arizona was a little flustered, and then it didn't help when they were flustered that Jaden Bradley got into foul trouble. And so I think those things played a significant role in it. But Michigan was just sort of unstoppable.
Will they be unstoppable tonight?
Yes, but also Danny Hurley. You can't, we just heard James Patterson in that update talk about the fact that they're going for 3 championships in 4 years and 7 overall, but 3 and 4 is, John Wooden territory. So, I wouldn't just count out UConn because some of the things that maybe I thought they would have, lost Illinois over. One of them specifically would be the size of, say, an Illinois or a Michigan. Terrace Reed has shown in this tournament that, it doesn't really matter the size of the front courts, that he's still going to be able to be the best big on the floor. So, I incorrectly said that there'd only be 2 outcomes in the Arizona-Michigan game, and that was the 2 outcomes would be either Michigan wins close or Arizona wins close. So, obviously, I was wrong about that, but I think this will be a close one tonight. I would take UConn to cover the 6.5 points, but take Michigan to win outright and win the first championship for the Big Ten in 26 years.
So we were talking about this earlier, and you and I are about the same age. So that Fab Five Michigan team was such a cultural phenomenon, was such a huge deal without having to win a national championship to secure their spot in the annals of college basketball history and of University of Michigan history. What would winning a national championship, if Michigan is able to pull it off, do now, given the changing context, given the fact that, you can't really firmly establish yourself as a first mover in a lot of the movements that Fab Five team was. But what would their, I guess, place in Michigan and in college basketball history be if we compare them to the last iconic Michigan team?
Yeah, it's a great question, OC. I remember the 30 for 30 on the Fab Five, and one of the things that stuck with me was, nobody really remembers who won the championship the 2 years the Fab Five didn't, but they went to the Final Four, and we remember how iconic culturally those teams were. And so sometimes we don't even remember who wins the championships, and a team like the Fab Five sort of always resonates with us. I think sometimes we kind of overrate championships from that standpoint. The Big Ten has not had a national championship in college basketball since 2000 when Michigan State did it. Michigan is making its second trip to the national championship game since then, and I think third to the Final Four. They haven't won a title since 1952. So, it would obviously be significant from a Michigan standpoint. I can't imagine there ever were a bunch of Michigan fans in the state of Utah, but I'd imagine now they're probably even less than there used to be because of the Kyle Whittingham situation that hangs up. And look, if any Michigan fans, within 5 minutes of meeting them that they'll let you know that they went to Michigan. That's great pride. That's great pride to have in their school, their academics, and their athletics. And so, it's we think about these things in terms of like, well, it's more of a football school, and obviously it is, but Michigan's had as good of a basketball program historically as anybody. And, so I think they have as good a basketball fans, as there are. Now, they're not going to fill up the arena in the same way they fill up the Big House, but, I think the bigger piece here is for the Big Ten. I don't know that it's that big of a deal for Michigan, other than, again, their first title since '52. But I just think, the fact that the Big Ten has not won a national championship in basketball since 2000 is kind of remarkable. And so it's like a bigger deal there, especially when you look at, the ACC, the Big East have had 8 national championships in that same time period. So they've really lagged behind, and so now they've taken over in football seemingly, and this would be a reemergence on basketball because they've had tons of trips to the Final Four, but haven't closed it out since 2000.
All right, Timken, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, turning the attention back to the University of Arizona. I mean, before they ended up with a disappointing weekend, heading into the weekend, we got a definitive answer on Tommy Lloyd. He said, "Yeah, I'm not going to go to North Carolina. I'm staying at the University of Arizona." And it sounds like the school stepped up his assistant pool, salary pool for his assistants, and usually that comes with an NIL commitment and things like that as well. So what does that mean for the Wildcats? He didn't come through the way that a lot of us hoped he would this year, but coming off the heels of a loss like that, you also got the good news that he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to unpack this, OC. So let's start with the Arizona side of things, and that is, there was clearly a disconnect between their athletic director Desiree Reed-Francois and the head coach and Tommy Lloyd, and so I think that's where the wandering eyes came from. But it wasn't disingenuous. I mean, UNC was coming after him, and so it's obvious that he needed to clear up the things that needed to be cleared up internally for him to not want that other job. But for me, when it comes down to like all these big jobs, and Arizona is as blue blood as it gets without maybe being in North Carolina, Duke, Kansas blue blood, but still, I mean, Arizona is as close there as anybody in terms of that. So they obviously present a huge opportunity, a school that's committed to basketball. So number one, he wants the big three, and that's what everybody wants, the big three, which is 1, money for yourself, 2, money for your assistants, 3, money for your players. So that had to be locked up. And then maybe the most telling aspect of the contract details would be the doesn't have to report to the athletic director anymore. And again, I think that just speaks to the relationship that they had or lack thereof. And I don't know how that gets managed moving forward, but
whoops.
But at least for Tommy's perspective, he gets what he wants and doesn't have to deal with Desiree Reed-Francois anymore. What's really interesting to me, though, OC, in all of this is, so The Athletic released this article that came out over the weekend that said, the number one most sought-after job, the best job in college basketball in America is Duke. And they basically surveyed 51 coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches, and asked them to rank their top 5 jobs. And so number 1 was Duke. Number 2 was North Carolina, tied with Kentucky. Number 4 was Kansas, and so on and so forth. I think Arizona was like 6th. Well, I mean, if we go by this, it's interesting because North Carolina has gone after Tommy Lloyd, and it seems like Dusty May, only for both of those guys to, 1, take a contract with Arizona, and then 2, obviously, Dusty May to reaffirm his commitment to Michigan. So sort of interesting how that's viewed as one of the best jobs in America, and yet here's 2 guys with jobs that are not viewed as highly as the North Carolina open job that have, are not leaving for it. So I think it just speaks to the reality of some of the best jobs in America may be the best jobs to individuals, but not to everybody. I'm sure John Shire, Duke was his dream job, in the same way that Bill Self's dream job was Kansas, in the same way that Tommy Lloyd's dream job may have always been Arizona. So, it's just really interesting to me how this all shakes out when it comes to these jobs that are open, how they're viewed, collectively by the public, certainly, and then what would it take to get those guys? And I think it's harder and harder to get those guys to leave a Michigan or an Arizona to go to some of these bluer bloods because, they know what the skeletons are in the closets for where they're at, and they know, what the devil they know beats the devil they don't know, and the things they don't know about those universities, which I think make staying more attractive. So it's a really interesting dynamic. I think with Tommy, we'll see what happens with Desiree Reed-Francois, if she sticks around or if there's a mutual party of ways after this, because it feels like there's no coming back from a guy that, as a coach under you is no longer going to be working under you.
We saw a relatively similar situation. It's a while ago now, but when UCLA had an open job and they had to go down to their 4th, 5th, and I think it was reported that Mick Cronin ended up being their 6th top choice. And, he came in. It looked great for a while. I don't know if people still think it looks great. He certainly has a lot of things to say about the state of college basketball. Are we entering that kind of territory for North Carolina, do you think?
Well, look, I think, short answer, yes. I think very publicly they've been turned down by their top 2 candidates. And again, if you're hiring one of the best coaches in college basketball, then, Tommy Lloyd and Dusty May are certainly in that conversation. We haven't heard about Danny Hurley, but it doesn't appear he's willing to leave either. There's been a lot of smoke around Billy Donovan. In fact, kind of the day that news broke about Hubert Davis, there was also a story that broke that basically Donovan was potentially looking to get out of Chicago. I don't think those things are a coincidence. It's funny because Donovan's been gone from college basketball for a long time now. And look, I still think he'd be a fantastic coach. He's been a good NBA coach. He's just been on a miserable franchise in the Chicago Bulls. But I do think that that's where North Carolina wants to go. The problem is they've had to wait around, and so it's made it look even worse because they're waiting, I guess, for the Bulls to finish their season and for the other shooter drop when it comes to that kind of stuff. But it is just a weird dynamic, to your point, where it's like very publicly this program that is considered to be one of the best jobs in America is being turned down routinely by others. And again, I think it's all about, do you have the big 3? Do you have money for yourself, money for your coaches, and then money, for your coaching pool, and then money from an NIL perspective? And then are you aligned with your athletic director? I think if those 4 things align, then there's probably no reason for you to go. But if any of those 4 aren't, then there's a good chance you would leave. And I think when you look at the top of the sport, there's not much of a difference between, what you have at your school versus what they have elsewhere, unless, you're Chris Beard and you're at Texas Tech, but your alma mater is Texas, or you're a Bill Self and you're at Illinois, but the only job you'd ever leave for is Kansas, or, you're a John Shire and you played under Coach K and then coached under him. So, it feels like, again, some of these jobs that are viewed that highly are more viewed highly by certain people, but not everybody. And if it's the right job that you have currently and your access to money for your coaches, access to money for your players, there's not much of a difference at the top of the sport between, what North Carolina and Duke are doing from a money standpoint and what you've got at Texas Tech or anywhere else.
Before I let you go, right after we signed off on Friday, we got news that, look, we don't have to worry about transfer portal anymore. We don't have to worry about the mess of the arms race in college sports because an executive order was signed to save us from all of it. Ari, I don't know what I was worried about.
Regardless of how you feel about the president, there's a level of irony here because he's in some ways reacting to a Supreme Court ruling, a unanimous ruling that like the main opinion of it was held by a guy that was appointed to the Supreme Court by the current president, as were multiple other Supreme Court justices that ruled essentially against him in this way. Retroactively, but there's just a level of irony to that, right? Like here are multiple Supreme Court justices, all were appointed to the Supreme Court by Donald Trump, and then now all their opinions in a unanimous decision basically saying that the NCAA was a monopoly. Now, that opinion is being sort of invalidated with the executive order by Trump. The executive orders, as much as I know about them, basically just apply to government agencies, government entities, entities and agencies that the president oversees. So I don't know how the NCAA would fall, under that. And then on top of that, again, if any of this were to be enacted, I'm sure they would all sue under the grounds of the Supreme Court justice ruling that, again, ironically, many of the Supreme Court justices appointed by Trump voted for. So just a hilarious set of circumstances here. I can't imagine he didn't think about that, or at least was told by lawyers for him that of that irony.
Felt like an optics play, but we'll see how it ends up, even though I think we know exactly how it's going to end up.
100% an optics play. And then, but again, it's just funny to be like, but these are guys you appointed. You appointed these justices.
Yeah. I don't. I think we could have a laugh about that without getting too political on the show because it's just like, did you forget?
Right, exactly.
It's like these guys are on your team, and then you're just like, I'm going to overrule your decision, and they're like, you can't. And then, oh, dang it, never mind.
Or maybe it's sort of funny because those Supreme Court justices that he appointed, politically align with him politically, and yet this is the one area where it feels like politically he's disingenuous to his party and to the principles of the party. Like very non-Republican for them to be anti-business in this sense, and but yeah, there you go.
Well, I don't know that it's going to be the solution everyone wishes it was, but there we are.
No, it's not. Yeah, no, it's not.
All right.
They need to collectively bargain. OC. That's it. That's what we need. We want it. We need it. We just need to get it from the NCAA.
That's where we're at now. As tough as it is, as tough a pill it is to swallow, that's what has to happen, or else the current state of things is either going to continue or somehow possibly get worse, which I don't want to see.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I would say more towards getting worse than anything else, because it certainly isn't getting better.
You and I should have become sports attorneys because this era would have been very kind to us.
I always like to say I'm not a lawyer, but sometimes I like to play one on the radio.
Ari, you're the man. Appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Take care, OC. Be well.
Ari Temkin, he's awesome. Tune in radio, Big 12 today. He is just an encyclopedia of. I mean, we spent 5 minutes on Michigan there. Anyway, cannot say more about how great. Could not say enough, I should say, about how great Ari is. All right, the hot lunch is coming next. We'll talk about the executive order and whether or not anything actually changes because of it. It's Utah's number one sports talk, the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hot lunch today brought to you by our friends over at Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. A sweet and hot chicken sandwich, grilled chicken sandwich with bacon and Swiss cheese. This thing is unbelievable. They keep the lunch special under $15 every day. Perfectly crisp fries on the side, and, of course, a fry sauce. Ask for an extra because you want to be liberal with your fry sauce dipping. 1717 South Main, the hot lunch brought to you by our friends over at Big Willie's. So this happened right after our show went final on Friday. President Trump signed an executive order, the urgent national action to save college sports. Dun, 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 dun. 5-year eligibility limits. Okay, so he and Tommy Tuberville are in alignment there. One-time transfer rule. He and Tommy Tuberville are in alignment there. And by the way, I don't know what your political leanings are. We can make some guesses because you're in Utah, but whatever. I'm not here to play any kind of political game. I think that it's farcical and stupid, and rooting for a political party that doesn't care about you is not any more mature than rooting for a professional sports team that doesn't care about you. But I understand why people do it. Go ahead. Fine. The one-time transfer rule, whether you want to laugh at President Trump signing an executive order that doesn't actually change anything because lawyers and Supreme Courts have ultimate and final say in these types of things, the one-time transfer rule is a good rule. It is something that we should consider and hopefully enact at some point, whether through collective bargaining or whatever. It would improve the career of most players, not all. It would improve the situation you have right now with mobility in college sports. It would make it easier for you to stay connected and root for your franchise, root for your team. So a lot of people either blindly support or laugh at, and not a lot of middle ground, anything that the president does currently. The one-time transfer rule is a good rule, okay? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if you don't like Donald Trump. That is a rule that we should be supporting right now. Also includes protections for women's sports. And legal experts have said that this exceeds presidential authority and will be challenged in court, and that obviously is what's going to happen here. But he signed it on April 3rd. It is supposed to become effective on August 1st, and it probably will never actually see the light of day. There was a lot of conversation, right? He held that big roundtable meeting that had way too many people at it, and no real conversation could have actually taken root. But the solution that we just talked about with Ari Temkin is most likely collective bargaining in college sports. And it feels icky that we've gotten to that level because it's just, at that point, professional sports attached to your university or loosely attached to your university, or just licensing the brand name of your university or whatever. But again, whether you like Tommy Tuberville or you like Donald Trump or you like a fill in the blank on the other side of the aisle, it's kind of irrelevant where the good idea comes from. We need a good idea. We need one that will, quote unquote, save college sports the way that this one is titled. The gender identity politics stuff we will leave for another day, but just the wild and unfettered nature that the free market took over college sports has, in a lot of ways, compromised our interest, our passion, our love as a nation for it. I don't want the kids to get caps on their earning. I don't want the kids to have their opportunities taken away. I want it to look more like real life. And you might be saying, hey, well, hold on. You can change jobs every year that you want in real life. And yes, you can. So you can also change schools every year that you want to in the current system. But those birds come home to roost at some point in your career if you do it too much. And the same can and is and will be true in college sports. I was crowing loudly about how stupid it was that NBA players or G League players were going to be allowed back into college sports this year because, again, there's no adult in the room to just be like, guys, this is dumb. That guy can't go from the pros to college. And guess what? None of those guys were impactful players that came back. To my knowledge, not one. Certainly not the ones with any local attachment. So what that was really about was just like bad decisions being made along the way by the young people, by the player, by their agent, by their parent, by whatever. If there's anything we can do as a collective sports public, as the president of the United States, as a senator, government, Congress, whoever, if there's anything we can do to not enforce, not limit, but to help the decision-making processes of young people who now have huge earning potential and opportunities, and make it some kind of reflection of positivity and some kind of analogy to the real world, we should look for that. And also, collective bargaining in professional sports, since this is becoming a professional sport, collective bargaining makes it so you don't have free, unfettered access to the open market as a professional athlete. And every one of these dang kids fancies themselves a professional athlete right now. So in their world, the closest analogy, the closest thing to that real life scenario is collective bargaining, is a free market that exists but only within a very strict structure. Victor Wembanyama can't just enter a transfer portal and leave the San Antonio Spurs anytime he wants. He's got to wait. He's got to play it by the rules. He's got to go by the book. Right now, there is no book. We accept that book's existence in professional sports because the athletes and their representatives and the teams and the owners have all come together and figured out, all right, this is the compromise we can all live with. There is no compromise we can all live with right now in college sports. We have to get there at some point. Maybe the president isn't the right guy to find that. Maybe Tommy Tuberville isn't the right guy to find that. Maybe AOC is not the right person to propose that. I don't know who it's going to be. Gavin Newsom, it's not him. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know how it's going to be. But it has to be if we want college sports to look anything like the stuff we grew up on. It just has to. Easy to laugh at, oh, this isn't going to do anything. Easy to laugh at any of the politicians that are trying to do this performative thing and say, ho, 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 I'm on your side, sports fans. I'm going to save this, and we'll put those kids back in their place. It's very easy to laugh at that. If there is a genuine effort being made anywhere, and this might not be it, I'm using it as a jumping off point, and Tommy Tuberville might not be it either, but if there's a genuine effort being made, those people should be supported. Those people should be applauded. The genuine effort. All right, we're going to take a break here. That's the hot lunch. Everett Gray is going to join us. Former NBA player, former UNLV running Rebel from those early 90s Tarkanian teams. You know, we were talking at the beginning of the show about this Michigan basketball team and their dominance through NCAA tournaments so far and an opportunity to win a national championship. Are they culturally iconic, though, the way the Fab Five was? Are they like those UNLV teams with Grandmama and Stacey Augmon and Everett Gray was on those teams? Maybe we'll get to that with him. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Well, welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Talk a little college hoop here with former UNLV running Rebel, former NBA basketball player Everett Gray, kind enough to join us here on the show. Mr. Gray, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you, sir?
What's going on, James? How you been, buddy? It's been a minute.
You know, we're reacting right now to this this breaking news that North Carolina has hired their next coach, Mike Malone, from the NBA ranks.
My bad, OC. Don't beat me up.
I'm not. You don't have anything to worry about from me, Everett. North Carolina found their next coach. It seemed like they were flirting with Tommy Lloyd and Dusty May. Those guys both elected to stay where they were. And Mike Malone coming from the NBA circles back into college basketball to take the North Carolina job. What are your thoughts on that?
It sounds like they were scrambling to hire someone, to be honest, because I didn't hear anything about this name. I know Michael because I think I played for his dad in summer league and NBA at one point, but it seems like they were scrambling since the portal is going to open here in about at midnight. So they were probably scrambling. A few people turned him down, and they had to find someone. And I think he's a good coach. I don't know how he's going to translate. How's it going to translate into the college part because he's been away from us so long. So that was probably the best hire they could get. They probably got turned down by a lot of people.
It's such a strange thing because we talk about North Carolina, right? It's North Carolina. It's supposed to be a basketball blue blood, but the current state of college sports has changed kind of those power rankings where you don't have to be at a place steeped in tradition as long as your current spot has the resources that you need, has support for your staff, basically has the money that you need. I mean, we've seen it in football. Indiana won the dang national championship in football. Right. So is this same thing happening in college basketball, you think? I mean, Michigan hasn't been in a title game for a long time.
Because with the portal, it's kids are not worrying about what it looked like. OC, they just worry about the bottom line. Can I get playing time and how much money I can get? And that's just the way it is at this point. So these blue bloods are struggling a little bit with these players. On the flip side is some of these blue bloods are playing with five-star freshmen playing against 23, 24, 25-year-old men, and this is what you see in a tournament. But for going forward until it changes, these blue bloods kids are not caring. They don't care about what it looks like and where they go. They worry about the bottom line is how much money they can make, which is what this new deal of the NCAA, how it set up where these kids don't care, OC, about North Carolina and powder blue and Michael Jordan, all that stuff. They don't really care about that. They just want the bottom line and how much money I can play, how much money I can make, and where can I make it to the tournament and go far in the tournament. I thought Hubert Davis did a pretty good job, but it wasn't losing in the first rounds for the last couple of years. It was hard for him to overcome that. So when it comes to this, this is the new landscape of college basketball, and it's very interesting.
With that in mind, would more programs potentially be better served to try to lure coaches back from the pros? I mean, you're not going to get, in most cases, you're not going to get an active NBA coach, but maybe you can grab an assistant, even a lead assistant, and say, hey, we've got some resources for you. We'd like you to come back. And, you know, the line is blurred now between professional basketball and college basketball because these kids are paid as highly compensated professionals. So would a pro coach be able to better handle college sports now than they ever were before?
I believe so, because these kids are not, I mean, I want to say student athletes, but are they really, OC? These guys, these college coaches are making a lot of money. They're almost making more money than NBA coaches. So some of these colleges are plucking some of these NBA guys, just like BYU's coach. I mean, he was probably targeted to be an NBA head coach here in the next 2 or 3 years, but then the money came in at the college ranks. So the only difficult part of change, the difference between coaching in the NBA, you got to do a little bit more recruiting to get the players. But it's pretty easy now, obviously, to recruit because you just go in the portal. You don't really have to travel a little bit. You can just grab a really good kid that has good numbers at a mid-major or maybe a D2 because they're going down to D2s too. But these kids are, as I should say, are making a lot of money in college now. And it's hard to turn down North Carolina, just the fact that it is a blue blood. But he has to recruit. Wherever he does, Mike is going to have to out-recruit Shire. And they don't really care if you win or lose. If you can out-recruit Shire, because Shire is getting those guys, and Shire has some guys that's coming in already, and Hubert wasn't getting those guys. So that's why I think he got let go, because of the simple fact that 8 miles away, this guy is recruiting way better than this guy at North Carolina.
Everett Gray's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things college hoop. Maybe we'll get some pro questions in as well. When we're looking at the landscape and where University of Utah sits now, everyone was excited that Alex Jensen got the job. Obviously, you bring back a guy from the all-time great teams at the university and a guy who extends, or at least can stir the echoes of those glory days with Coach Majerus. But the world is very, very different now, and I'm having a hard time with the chicken and the egg as it pertains to Utah basketball, because you want results. Can you get results in the transfer portal and in recruiting until you have results on the floor by winning? Well, how are you supposed to win if you don't have the bodies, if you don't get the wins already in the transfer portal? And it seems like, well, the answer to all that is money. But then that brings in another chicken and egg conversation for me. How do you convince your boosters who are already supporting football and already supporting the university, how do you get them to spend the money to take a gamble on restoring college basketball? And, I mean, do you have any thoughts on this? Is there a way that you can kind of piece together some positive winning results before you have the big-time investment? Did we lose him?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there you are. Can you hear me? Maybe not. We'll try to reconnect with Everett Gray here. Don't know if it's us or him, reception, who knows.
OC.
You got me?
OC, yeah, I got you. Yeah, I heard your question. So the thing is that it comes down to money.
Okay.
And the money, if he can get the money where everybody else is at, I think it'll be fine. I just saw TB just hopped into the portal. And he's gonna, and the Dawes kid hopped in. It's just like it's gonna come down to money. I mean, like, I know Al. I know Al since high school. So I think he'll do a great job if he has the resources. And somebody's gonna have to step up. I don't know who that will be, but if he can get the money, I think he can get at least these top Utah kids and these connecting state kids to stay here and play. And then you're going to have to obviously out-recruit BYU because BYU has all the resources. But does it translate into winning, OC? No, but at least give them a fighting chance with the money. And this is how, like we went back and like I told you before, that's just the landscape of college basketball, because I have a bunch of kids in the portal now, and it's just the first question, OC, is what's the number? I'm like, let's find out what can he do on the floor, but that's just what it is at this point. And I hate this part of it, OC, because I'm a little bit old school, even though I went to UNLV, but we ain't going to get into that, OC.
We are. We're going to get into it here in a second, Everett.
But, it's just the landscape. I've probably had about 5 phone calls this morning, OC, and what's the number? It's always that. So it's interesting, but this is where we at now.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you. We started the show. We were talking about how dominant Michigan has been. I had high hopes for Arizona, and they couldn't even get started in that Final Four game over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And this Michigan team looks like they're a favorite tonight in the national championship. And when you think Michigan basketball, still, if you're in my age group, your age group, even James is a lot younger than us, Like, you think of Michigan basketball, and you think of the Fab Five. You think of a team that was a cultural phenomenon that didn't actually win a national championship, but still goes down in the annals of Michigan basketball history and in just college hoops history in general. And I was like, well, how do we compare? If this Michigan team can beat UConn and they can win a national championship, do we even bother comparing them to the Fab Five? Is it apples and oranges? Because, you got this transfer portal thing now. These guys aren't, it's not a bunch of freshmen. It's not a bunch of first movers, a bunch of guys that are wearing shorts no one has ever seen. It's like, I mean, you were part of those early 90s UNLV teams that were pretty similar, right? You guys were a phenomenon for basketball and non-basketball reasons. And now we're looking at potentially great UConn teams and potentially great all-time great Michigan teams, and it doesn't have the same feel to it. Is there even a way to compare these things?
No, I mean, the crazy part about the Fab Five is that Frieder did it the right way, I guess, at that time and recruited those guys. But you can't really compare these two teams with the new landscape. To be honest, obviously, I picked Michigan in the beginning of this tournament because I do some NBA stuff with coaching in Vegas, and I had a Dai Mora kid, and I was like, this dude is crazy. So I run a lot of stuff with him out of the high post like a Jokic when I had the kid for 4 days in August in Vegas. And I was like, and then I saw the other pieces they had. So I saw this coming. Ask anyone, I think I told James I had Michigan at the beginning of the tournament, but you can't compare the Fab Five. The Fab Five nowadays will kill everybody in this tournament. But, the thing is, with the kid, basketball, and he was like 7, and that's a great story too. And Adai was at UCLA, and Cronin kind of ran. He does a great job. He was in the running for that line, but then he turned it down. But I think the Fab Five was great. They always compare that team against our team. And the crazy part, I was at the game when Chris called timeout because I was in the NABC All-Star game. My roommate was Josh Grant, and we were both sitting there like, dude, they don't have any timeouts left because you can see it. But anyway, we was at that game in New Orleans when he called timeout the second year when they played North Carolina. But I think it's just you just never know with this tournament now, with this new landscape. You don't know who's going to win this tournament, and that's what makes it. I think it's great, and it makes it fun because everybody thought it was crazy to pick Michigan. And you see, and Arizona had a great year. Tommy Lloyd is a great friend of mine, but I just saw Michigan OC, and I saw him, and I saw some people in the summer, and I said these guys are going to be.
All right, the upcoming NBA draft lottery is going to be watched very, very closely by Utah Jazz fans and fans all over the NBA world. It is a loaded draft. If you have the first pick, who are you taking?
Ooh. OC, why you do that?
I'm going
to go with I'll go with he's well, I don't know with Peterson. It's tough. But you got to go with Banza. If you can get Banza, if the Jazz do get the number 1 pick, you go with Banza. Now you have Ace, and you have those two cornerstones on the wing, similar to maybe. I'm not comparing them to them, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like Boston with JT and Jaylen Brown. If you can build around those two. Maybe I'm just playing maybe move Market and get another a solid piece around it, or you stick with Market and whatever they want to do, what they want to do. But I think if you go number 1, you got to go with the best because he's available. I don't know. I'm like, it was a unknown with Peterson. He's a great talent, but he has some, I don't know, some issues, but he didn't play every game. And the band's at least played, and he was there and available, and I think he's great in the community. We don't know that about Peterson. The unknown is crazy with him. So, but he's a talented player. But I would definitely go with AJ.
Well, that's what the Utah Jazz fans are hoping happens, and we'll be keeping a close eye on it. Everett, appreciate you giving us some time today, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, James.
That's Everett Gray, former NBA basketball player, former running Reb in the coaching world now, connected at every level. And he says A.J. Debonsa, that seems to be where the conversation is going and the conversation is trending. And also, I don't think I can dispute, I mean, he was part of those UNLV teams, 90 to 93 at UNLV under Tarkanian. And off air, we could probably get some great stories also about how it was in those days down in Vegas. But when you talk about comparing the eras, it's unfair, and I'm doing it, so I know that's like backwards on my own show. What we saw from that UNLV team, what we saw from the Fab Five, what you saw from like the Detroit Pistons with the Rasheed Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, like those types of teams, I don't know that we ever get to go back to those exact things because the landscape changes, things move along. Even in the NBA, where there are collective bargaining situations that restrict player movement, they find a way to squad up, and now you've got these like mini all-star teams in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference, and it's just, I don't know. It's different. We got to take a quick one here. We're going to come back with the Daily Dump. Good news if you're a Ravens fan. And much more. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, Valley Plumbing can take care of all of it. Go to valleyplumbing.com, make an appointment, get your air conditioner checked out. If you still have an old swamp cooler, they can fix that thing for you. Get on top of it early. The weather is in that nice little Goldilocks zone right now. You probably don't need a ton of furnace. You don't need a ton of air conditioning just yet, but right around the corner, blazing hot. Also, they can install a new unit, save you a lot of money on your energy bills. The recurring cost of those energy bills can be very annoying, very problematic. Valley Plumbing, look for the truck with the duck. All right. The Daily Dump. How about this? Angel Reese has been traded. The Me-Bounds will now be happening in Atlanta. Angel Reese has obviously become one of the most vocal, visible, interesting players in WNBA basketball, and she is headed to Hotlanta. Feels like an excellent fit from a marketing standpoint, from a put butts in the seat type standpoint, which, of course, you still have to worry about in the WNBA. But, James, any thoughts on a deal that takes 2 first-round picks to Chicago, and in return, Atlanta gets Angel Reese?
Just because you threw out the Me-Bounds, I gotta chime in, too, with one.
Me-Bounds, baby.
Maybe she'll dream of making it on the first shot with the Atlanta Dream. No, that was unnecessary. I'm sorry. No,
it's fine.
No, Angel. This is a significant deal. Like you said, she's one of the more well-known players in the WNBA because of her rivalry with Caitlin Clark, going back to that national championship at LSU, the first time Caitlin Clark led Iowa to the national championship game, which kind of call back to your interview with Ari Temkin. He said, in some ways, national championships are overrated. And we were talking about that in that we think of Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and the rest of the Fab Five when we think of Michigan basketball, even though that team, 2 years in a row, did not win national championships, got really close but didn't win. They have a national championship a few years before that, right? When it comes to women's basketball recently, it's the same kind of thing with those Caitlin Clark Iowa teams, right? Neither of those teams won a national championship. They got to the national championship game. But I don't know how many people could tell you that LSU and South Carolina won those championships. And Angel Reese was on that LSU team. But, this is a big deal for the WNBA. Hopefully a good second start with the Atlanta Dream for Angel Reese.
Speaking of women's basketball, we have a new national champion, and UCLA women's basketball. How many national championships has UCLA women's basketball won? Wait, don't answer it, James, because we're going to use that question, 877-353-0700, to give away our first round of golf in the Festival of Tees. Powered by the Utah Golf Association, every day ESPN 700 is giving away free rounds of golf to the best courses in the state and even beyond the state. Listen to me right here and Spence from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day. Details are also available at ESPN700sports.com. Lakeside. We're going to give away a free round to Lakeside. All right? If you could tell me, it's one at least, because UCLA beat South Carolina definitively. Nasty work. Dawn Staley was very gracious in defeat after some controversy between her and Gino Auriemma in the Final Four game. Corey Close and UCLA women's basketball, a 25-point victory in the national championship game. They lost one game this year. They are your new national champions in women's hoops. In the history of its women's basketball program, how many national championships have the UCLA Bruins won? Not the men's side, the women's side. 877-353-0700.
Gianna Neepkins, 15 points, by the way, for the Bruins in that game. Former Utah women's basketball players. Excited for her to get a national championship.
I mean, look, I don't know what the official stance is supposed to be when you're on the flagship home of a certain team and you lose one of the best players off that team and then they go on to a new spot and they win a national championship. For me, even though we don't like losing talents, even though you don't want to see somebody like Gianna Neepkins exit the program ever, man, you got to be happy for someone to have it work out at that level to where you contribute incredibly well while you're in the uniform. You're a great representative of the program while you're in the uniform. There's no controversy on the exit. There's no, oh, you got suspended. Oh, you got, this, that, or the other thing happened. You just decided that it was time to move on. And when you do move on, I'll be honest, there's a pettiness in me, James, that actually likes the fact and relishes the fact that a lot of the people that have left Utah football, when they go to that new spot, it doesn't work out the way they wanted it to. I know that's an immature stance. I know that's a petty and terrible way to be as a human being. I'm not debating that. I'm not disputing that. I realize it's a character flaw of mine, especially someone who transferred out of the program and had it go a little bit better. You would think I would be like a lot more reasonable about this. No, I'm not that way, okay? I'm a bad person.
Unless they transfer to Weber State and do well like you did, right? Then you're all about it.
Well, do well is very relative. But in any case, Gianna Neepkins left Utah women's basketball in good standing, I would say, in my opinion, and she went on to win a national championship. That is incredible. That is the dream. Every college athlete, I know now there's a lot more things. There's moving parts to it. Yeah, you want a degree, hopefully still. Obviously, you want NIL opportunities. You want as much money as you can. In women's basketball, that's a little bit less of a deal than in men's basketball and in football, but it's still a deal, right? Those are driving decision-making points. But one of the things that you as a kid hope you get a chance to do is to win at the ultimate level, to win a national championship. Gianna Neepkins just did that. That's incredible. And like you said, she had a good game in doing it against a powerhouse program in South Carolina. So no one gets to take that away from her for the rest of her life, forever. She will be a member of a national championship team. She'll get that ring. She'll be on that trophies, like the etched name on the trophy. Like, it's incredible. Good for her. Good for Corey Close, by the way. I spent a lot of time talking to Corey Close when I was doing Pac-12 radio. The women's coaches in the Pac-12 and now the ones that have come over to the Big 12 with Utah, it's Adia Barnes and Corey Close and Tara Vanderveer, who ended up retiring. Like, these women are just incredible coaches, really, really interesting human beings. They love the game. And now the women's game is also, in some places, a revenue-producing sport, so the calculus is changing a little bit. But a lot of them got into it when it was not anywhere near glamorous. When WNBA basketball was not getting the attention, like these, it's very much a love of the sport kind of thing, and Corey Close is awesome. So congratulations to her and UCLA women's basketball for winning a championship.
Close friends with Lynn Roberts, by the way, now LA Sparks coach, former Utah women's basketball coach, who was the one that brought Gianna Neepkins here initially. So it made a lot of sense from that perspective why, if Gianna were to leave the program, she would go to UCLA. And like you said, worked out for her. And I think that in Gianna's case, there's more reason to kind of hold off that petty side of you or other people, because her coach did leave.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time, and that's something that is one of those transfer situations that we, for a long time, we've been okay with. Well, the coach that brought him there left. They can go ahead and play somewhere else. That's fine. That's what happened with Gianna Neepkins.
Also, one of the top players in the national championship game and really throughout the tournament and the season for UCLA, the sister of former Jazz man Jaime Jaquez Jr., Gabriela Jaquez, is the point guard for that UCLA women's basketball team. Obviously, her brother also played for UCLA, but Gabriela Jaquez, big game, 21 points, 5 assists in this one.
Yeah, she did what her brother couldn't do, but got very close to doing at UCLA. Delivered a national championship. But can you imagine that? You're in the same family, and both of you played in the Final Four.
pretty cool.
That's for the same school.
Gosh.
That's pretty cool.
That would be a real twist to the knife, though, at every Thanksgiving when your little sister's
Well,
got
we
the
won.
ring, and you're like out there playing pickup hoops, and she's just like, "Yeah, where's your national championship ring, Jaime?"
Hey, Jaime, I forgot what happened when you went to the Final Four.
Those kind of bragging rights must be brutal. I'm lucky enough that in my family we are just overall not successful in that regard. So
Yeah, don't have to worry about that.
because that would just be that would be really tough to have to swallow, to have to deal with. I am not the type of person who manages people having a real reason to talk trash. Well, we touched on this with Everett Gray, but I feel like we're not doing it justice if we don't reiterate that North Carolina has their new head coach. Multiple sources reporting, and his Wikipedia has already been changed, so you know it's legit now.
They're so quick with that, the Wikipedia editors.
I wonder if, like, Pete Thamel goes in and he changes it.
It's the
He's like-
newsbreaker that does it.
Breaking news, he tweets, and then he goes into whoever that person's Wikipedia page is.
Oh my gosh, if I hadn't even thought of that before, but if I were a big national newsbreaker in a certain sport, I would absolutely do that. That
It'd
would
be so
that'd be
awesome.
so awesome.
It'd be so sweet. All right, so Mike Malone, former Denver Nuggets head coach, is taking over North Carolina's basketball program. Now, this is interesting because he has not been in college basketball since 2001.
What team was he with?
He was with Manhattan.
Okay.
He has never really been with a big-time college basketball program, and he's never been a head coach in college basketball.
I believe we're going to have to double check, but I believe Gordy Chiesa also a former Manhattan assistant coach at one point, or at least
Well,
knows a lot of those guys.
James, you and I, our brains sometimes go the same place because I looked up Mike Malone's coaching resume, right? And he was at Friends School of Baltimore, which none of us have ever heard of, but I'm sure Gordy has.
There's a lot of friends there, it sounds like.
Then he was at Oakland, the Oakland Golden Grizzlies
Yeah, Oakland in Michigan.
in Michigan. When you think Oakland, you think Michigan, obviously. You don't think athletics. You don't think Raiders. You think Golden Grizzlies, okay? He was an assistant there, 94, 95. And then this is where the Gordy Chiesa stuff really comes in. Providence, assistant, 95 to 98. Manhattan assistant, 99 to 2001. And then he got an assistant coaching job with the New York Knicks, then Cleveland Cavaliers, then the Hornets, then the Warriors, head coach of the Sacramento Kings, 13 and 14, head coach of the Denver Nuggets, 2015 to 2025. And now, after 25 years, he's going back to college basketball, taking over a North Carolina program. His name was nowhere near any of the lists that I ever saw. I did not see or hear a mention until it was breaking news. Mike Malone is being. It was always Billy Donovan was the guy.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it right at the beginning, but it did seem very. It was buried under Tommy Lloyd and Billy Donovan and Dusty May, et cetera, et cetera. For me, he had become an afterthought in this national search. I went, oh yeah, he was initially on some of those lists.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much I love it for Carolina because, one, it's been forever since he's been in college basketball. Two, college basketball has changed. Even if it had been only 5 years, college basketball has changed so much. I'll believe he'll be great at Carolina when I see it, I guess.
Okay. Do we know how his relationship with Jokic is at this point? Because remember, there was like
Some falling out there, which led to his firing.
an interesting situation where it was like, hey, when did you find out that they were firing him? And he was just like, I found out when everyone else found out. And everyone was just like, we don't believe that because you're the star of this team. Nothing's going to happen without you being informed and basically signing off on it. And he was just like, I don't know what you mean. And then they did a little bit more reporting, and it seemed like there'd been a fracture at some point in a relationship that at one time had been very, very good. That is, to me, an interesting point here for North Carolina, because if Mike Malone and the Joker are still on good terms, now you've got this entire Eastern European pipeline opening up in a way that, I mean, obviously North Carolina gets access to a lot of places, but you could have a lot more of a preferential treatment, especially in Serbia, where you're getting a ton of talent. The opposite can also be true. If you're not on good standing with Jokic, he's the type of guy that might just be like, no, don't go to North Carolina. Anyone who's ever heard of anyone that I've ever played with or coached with, don't go to North Carolina. You're not going to like that guy.
He might just campaign his sidekick school, Kentucky. Jamal Murray from Kentucky. Be like, yeah, just go to Kentucky. Don't,
Sucks.
you know, like, yeah, that's
like how spiteful is the relationship? Is he just going to be like, every time he goes and does a camp in Serbia, Jokic is going to be like, all of you go to Duke. That would suck.
That would suck
for Mike Malone.
That would suck. The other thing about Michael Malone that I can't decide if it'll work better, if it means it'll work better for him in college than it did in the NBA, which, by the way, won an NBA championship. Very successful NBA coach in his time. But I can't decide if his fiery, intense, gonna only stick with the guys that only gonna stick with the veterans I can trust in the lineup kind of mentality that was ultimately his downfall with his players and his ownership and the ownership group in Denver. I can't decide if that's gonna work better in college than it did at the end of his time in Denver, because on the one hand, Tom Izzo, Danny Hurley, Bill Self, so many coaches in college so many successful coaches, national championship coaches are, master general, I'm going to berate you every time you make a mistake, or I'm going to be super intense and I'm only going to trust the guys that I trust kind of thing. That works in college like it doesn't work in the NBA a lot of times, but also this new era of college basketball, the player thinks that they're all that. Is it just going to turn those guys off and they're going to tune you out quicker because of that? I don't know. That's why I say I might have to wait and see before I believe he can be successful at Carolina.
Mike Malone being hired as the next basketball coach at the University of North Carolina. We'll see how it plays out. I asked this to Everett Gray. There's a case you could make that with the professionalization of college hoops and college football and college every sport, maybe coaches with pro experience are going to have an easier time transitioning back or forth. Maybe because you're dealing with pro athletes in college now. When you go to the pros, you're just like, yeah, I've already dealt with a bunch of pros. We just didn't pay quite as much, and we didn't have collective bargaining, and we had to talk to their moms. When you're in the NBA, you don't probably have to do that. Going back from NBA basketball to college basketball, I imagine is less of a transition than it was 10 years ago, because you're talking about payroll. You're talking about salary cap. You're talking about, hey, well, this guy's paid $3 million. We got to get the most out of him. That stuff happens in the NBA, right? This guy's on a big salary. You better figure it out. It's not an owner saying that to you. It's the university president, or it's the board of chancellors guy, or whatever. But good luck to Mike Malone in North Carolina. And when I say that, I mostly mean like I don't care. It's not like I want North Carolina to be good.
Should we do what the guys down south do with North Carolina? Because now they've got a former NBA coach, recent NBA coach, NBA champion coach, and for their men's basketball team, and a recent Super Bowl champion coach for their football team. Should we do it? It's Provo, right? Is it Pruency? I don't know.
I don't know if we're going to do that.
Pro-Unk.
Oh, man. Luka. It was a bummer to see this over the weekend. Luka with a grade 2 left hamstring strain that you don't see a ton of it, where a guy can't play through the play, like can't finish out the play on a hamstring. You know? When somebody in football really messes up the hamstring, you'll see him go down maybe. That's football. In basketball, when somebody has like they usually can like pass the ball off and then they start limping around. Luka just lost his dribble. It was just like that thing just tweaked, cramped, gnarled up on him, and he was and just started limping around instantly. So pretty severe, or maybe he just doesn't have a high pain tolerance for hamstring-related things. But he is going to fly to Europe to seek specialized treatment on a grade 2 left hamstring strain.
He obviously feels like he can be back for the playoffs. That is very much in doubt, though, especially because without Luka Doncic, are you getting past the first round? The playoffs might not be very long for the Lakers.
Reeves is out with a grade 2 oblique injury. So now it's the LeBron James show. And look, if your third option is LeBron James, you're doing all right.
You're in a great spot.
But it's a really tough Western Conference playoff picture. I don't know. Luka obviously does, like you said, want to get back for the playoffs.
Reeves, same way. But like I said, these guys, if you're going to be back for the playoffs, you might have to get back sooner than you think. Because I don't know, like, they're in the 3 spot right now. They have a chance to fall as low as 5th before the end of the season. If they stay 3rd somehow, they're gonna have a rematch with the T-Wolves, who beat them in 5 games last year, and they had all 3 of those guys available in their 5-game gentleman's sweep last year. And DeAndre Ayton, newsflash, not been the upgrade at center to their no center rotation last year, right? So I don't feel good about the Lakers making it out of the first, make it long enough before those guys can come back and play.
Also, I know we've got a bunch of medical connections. The University of Utah is a wonderful medical school, and there's great orthopedic programs up there and stuff. But hamstring doctors, what are we doing here in America? You're telling me that a star basketball player for the Los Angeles Lakers would rather go seek treatment in Europe than have an American doctor fixing his hamstring? We're supposed to be the best at all of this stuff. Why is he going to Europe? I know he's European. Maybe he's just using it as an excuse to go home, but he's not Nikola Jokic. He's Luka Doncic. He's not the guy who's always just like, let me get home and watch my horses. What are we doing, hamstring doctors? 877-353-0700. If you're a hamstring doctor, explain to me why your field is suffering and lagging behind the Europeans. Do we have actual hamstring doctors, by the way?
They only work on hamstrings.
Like there's, like an otolaryngologist is the ear, nose, and throat doctor. Do we have a special term for hamstrings only? Hamstringologist?
Hamstringologist.
I would like to know.
Pig threadologist.
Okay. Don't do that. All right. That's the Daily Dub, brought to you by our friends over at Valley Plumbing. Look for the truck with the duck. Lots more left to get to here on the Sean O'Connell Show. We're going to talk about the NBA tank race. There's an update of some import.
Huge development in the tank race, OC.
And a reminder that for the latest spring football coverage, ESPN 700sports.com. Spring football is brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Burger Fusion, Valley Plumbing, Heating and Cooling, and Mountain Home Services. A tank race update, and then Tom Callahan. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. I'm just enjoying the polka music as we come back in here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Tank race update, and then we'll take a look at the Utah Mammoth with Mammoth Insider Tom Callahan to start off hour number 3. James, what's the latest in the tank race for the Utah Jazz?
OC, it's happening. The Kings won on Friday, 117-113. They beat the Pelicans, which means the Jazz are tied for the 4th worst record in the NBA, which, as I've been telling you, is the only way that they guarantee keeping their first-round pick this year. They have the exact same record as the Sacramento Kings for the 4th worst record in the league, the lowest. If this holds up, and I think there's like coin toss tiebreakers that the league does. If this holds up, you get some luck there. You will not be losing your first-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So let's go Kings now. They beat the Pelicans. They did lose their next game to the Clippers, but Jazz lost their 2 games over the weekend. So, yeah, tie for 4th there. I'm not even going to go through any of the other teams because it doesn't matter that much. I'm just going to give you the remaining schedule for the Jazz and the Kings. 3 games left for each of them.
All right. One more for the Jazz at home.
One more for the Jazz at home. That's going to be Friday night. But before that, on tomorrow night, they are at New Orleans. That's the team that the Kings just beat. So that's unfortunately a very winnable game for the Jazz. Pelicans aren't good at all. The home game on Friday is against the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr., Trey J revenge game from the bench for Trey J. That one also, unfortunately, very winnable for the Jazz, especially because it's at home. Sunday is the season finale, next Sunday is the season finale. I'm sorry, that would be this coming Sunday, the 12th, against the Lakers. And that didn't seem very winnable, but as we detailed in the Daily Dump at the end there, OC, a few minutes ago, Luka's out, and probably for the rest of this season, maybe gets back before the Lakers eliminated in the playoffs. Austin Reeves, same deal. LeBron is still there, and they still have something. They still probably have something to play for, trying to hold on to that 3 seed. But that's unfortunately a much more winnable game than we thought it would be. That's the season finale. It is in LA. For the Kings, they play the Warriors twice. Tomorrow in San Francisco at Chase Center. Steph is back, so that's good news for the tank race. That was a lot more winnable before Steph came back in the loss to the Rockets last night for the Warriors. They're at home. Their final home game is also on Friday against the Warriors. And then Sunday, the season finale is at Portland. And Portland's not like one of the best teams. They're not championship contenders, but that's a team that's going to be in the play-in and still has something to play for. So those are going to be some tough games for Sacramento to win. Jazz have a lot easier schedule. So anyway, I need one more win from the Kings, and the Jazz got to lose out. Then they're securely in 4th. But even if they both lose out, they tied for 4th. You still got a shot at the 4th best odds, which of course means you keep your pick. So there you go.
All right,
that's your tank race update.
So the Jazz doing a relatively successful job of racing toward the bottom. Well done, Jazz. You know what's so wild about this is we've spent, you and I, 2 years, but the entire market, like 4 years now, kind of following the demise, the decline, this exact type of thing. And you got to put a little lipstick on the pig. So you grab some funny music and you make it a tank race. In what, 5 months, 6 months, we're going to be like, okay, Jazz, now try to make the playoffs. That is pretty bananas, but it's exciting.
And we're now going to be disappointed every time they lose.
And now every time they lose, we're just going to be like, what are you doing?
How could you lose with this roster? Come on. When it's like, yeah, now we're saying basically the same roster. Obviously, guys out injured.
How could you lose with Keontae George as your leading scorer? How dare you? Man, sports fandom is a weird thing. All right. That's your tank race update. Hour number 3 begins next with Tom Callahan and a blistering hot Utah Mammoth team also nearing the end of their regular season and firmly in the first wild card position. Can they jump any higher? Is there real danger of them dropping lower and having a really tough first-round matchup? We'll get to all of it with Tom Callahan next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3. Welcome in Tom Callahan, Utah Mammoth Insider, host of Locked on Mammoth, friend of the program. Tom, welcome back. How are you, sir?
You know what? I'm getting excited. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. But man, we're creeping right up on playoffs here, and it's hard not to have your little puppy tail wagging.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for hockey fans in Utah, for Mammoth fans in Utah, and right now this team is blistering hot. 3 games in a row, scoring at least 6 goals, coming off a Clayton Keller hat trick. It's cliche to say, is this the best hockey we've seen this team play? But how close to the best version of the Utah Mammoth have we seen in the last 3 games?
Well, certainly offensively, they are clicking, and it's great to see. It's very exciting. One of the little, factors inside of this has been the fact that I think the power play has been a lot better, and that was something that we've talked about all year long about special teams needing to be better. They really needed to pick it up in that department, and boy, the power play when that's clicking. And even here's the thing: it may not score you the deciding goal in a game. But when it gets you a goal, when it gets you maybe 2 goals especially, other teams take note because now they have to stay out of the box. Now they're thinking about it. And I think that has been a big part of the resurgence here offensively. scoring on special teams is so huge, and you can't understate what it means right now.
Clayton Keller has been quiet at times over stretches this season. What does a hat trick do for him and for this team, who obviously in some ways goes the way of their captain?
You know, you look at the season he's had, it's been an emotional roller coaster for Clayton Keller. And I think that a lot of players dial their focus in more and more the closer they get to the postseason. Keep in mind, this is a fairly new thing for this franchise. Yes, they have some guys, and they brought in that Stanley Cup winning DNA, right? They've made trades or free agent signings with the intent of, you know, talking about this is how we're going to win. This is what it takes to win a championship. We want to learn these lessons from these players. But the core leaders are a lot of drafted and developed or long-time acquisitions who haven't had that taste of experience. And so Clayton Keller in particular, as the captain, you're right. The franchise does feed off of him. The whole room does. The fan base can. He needs to have it going at the right time. And I think his focus is starting to dial in right now. And having that game, I mean, you know, 3 goals and an assist against a Vancouver team that, quite frankly, was ripe for the picking. And I'm glad they let him up the way they did. I love to see his game rounding into form. And if this is the way he plays for them down the stretch and into the postseason, there's no reason not to be excited as a Mammoth fan, no matter who your first-round matchup is.
The first time I asked you this, it was still pretty brand new, and now we're a couple more weeks into this experiment. But the acquisition of Uyghur and what he has done for the blue line, what do you think?
I think it's probably the biggest deal they've made in their Utah residency since they've come into the state. Look at the difference without Uyghur in the lineup. Without like Sergachev out there, it's unbelievable. You don't realize how subtle and how professional Mackenzie Uyghur is and how much he's covered until all of a sudden he's, you know, day-to-day right now, misses the Vancouver game. I didn't think the Vancouver game was a very good game for them defensively, but they survived it, largely because it was the Canucks. But boy, oh boy, you see without Uyghur now, the difference he makes with Mackenzie Uyghur in the lineup is he covers a lot of those situations. He allows Mikhail Sergachev to be better because Sergachev can take more of those chances, knowing that he's got a guy back there who really has a great head for the game, understands, reads, reacts well. Mackenzie Uyghur does all of those tiny little things that you need to do to win hockey games. And I think that this is an incredibly underrated acquisition as far as the trade deadline goes. No one's talking about it. But we saw the other night what a huge impact he does have when he's not in the lineup. I think it was probably the best thing they could have done for themselves as far as bolstering the defense.
So this team is in a really nice spot right now. Part of the reason why your puppy tail is wagging, as you characterized it, is because this is the second year of Utah Mammoth existence. Well, first year of Utah Mammoth, second year of pro hockey at this level in the state of Utah, and you're already in, pretty firmly entrenched in that first wild card spot. How critical and crucial is it to stay exactly there, because you need the best matchup you can get in that first round?
Well, and I'm again going to be someone who let's just go ahead and suppose. Let's suppose Colorado does, finish this thing off and clinch the President's Trophy and all that fun stuff. They're the best team in the NHL. That's your 1-8 matchup, and then your 2-7 could be any of the Ducks, the Golden Knights, the Oilers. You never it could be any of those three teams if you finish there. Do I like matching up against the Pacific better than maybe the Avalanche? Yes, except for the Oilers, because they still haven't beaten the Oilers in a season plus in Utah. But I will say this, I'm not afraid of Colorado. I think this team matches up very well with Colorado. So if there's any fans out there, cut your friends off, head them off at the pass before they get into we can't play Colorado, we wouldn't have a chance. No, you absolutely would. They play Colorado very well. They play them very close. It's 1-goal games. Anything can happen in the playoffs. I'm not afraid of a Colorado series. I would expect Colorado to win it, but I would expect Utah to give them everything. However, matching up against the Ducks, which is a giant rivalry for this team, the Vegas Golden Knights, who are up and down, even Edmonton. I mean, you know what? In the playoffs, all bets are off. I actually think Utah being in the first wild card spot is favorable to them. If they fall to 2, I'm not worried. I'm not losing sleep. But that said, yes, I think that, if Anaheim comes out on top, or Vegas especially, that matchup bodes well for them.
We saw at the tail end of last season, it was the Blues, I think, that went on this epic run and, ended up being part of the reason why Utah didn't make it into the playoffs. We're at 8 regular season games, 6 regular season games left. And, there's points to be had or not. So who underneath this Utah Mammoth team are you paying closest attention to and maybe thinking they could be the surprise team that in the final few stacks up a bunch of points?
This is the fun part, because Nashville kind of controls not only its own destiny, but almost everybody around them, because they play the Kings again yet, and they just played the Kings. They have the Sharks in there as well. Nashville, whether you're rooting for or against the Predators, can in many ways be the kingmaker. If teams beat them, they can push them right on out of the conversation. If Nashville beats those teams head-to-head, Nashville puts itself comfortably ahead in that wild card 2 position. So really that group of 3, Nashville, LA, and San Jose, the Blues and the Jets are there. I just don't know if being at this point, as of us talking today, 3 points out and still having to jump 3 teams each, I don't see St. Louis or Winnipeg pulling it off. So Nashville, LA, San Jose, that's your group.
Tom Callahan, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utah Mammoth, all things NHL hockey. We talk about the fact that you still haven't shaken the Edmonton monkey off your back. In big picture, it probably only matters once you get to the playoffs, but you have an opportunity to beat them tomorrow night in one of your final home games of the season. What does that matchup look like?
5 of the last 6 coming at Delta Center is big for Utah, and it starts, with this Edmonton game. By the way, Connor Ingram has worked his way into the number 1 spot in Edmonton, which is a tremendous feel-good story. I love that for him. Just a great guy who's had his struggles, and man, I hope he continues to succeed. Maybe not, against the Mammoth, but what does beating them do right now? If they beat them, and it puts this little kernel of doubt in there. Edmonton suddenly says, hey, Utah is not the pipsqueak we've been running over this whole time. But really what I need to see against Utah is not so much the offense. As we've talked about, the offense has been going great. Special teams, the power plays look good. What I need to see, especially if it were a first-round playoff preview, is the containment of the Mammoth defense against this crazy Edmonton offensive outburst capability. The Oilers are a quick strike team. They're a very talented team. They've got arguably the 2 best players in the world. But, I mean, any team that has Connor McDavid not missing a limb really has a chance to beat you in a series, and that's why they're so scary, whether they have goaltending or not, whether they're playing defense or not, because the Oilers are one of the very few teams in the NHL that can outscore you even when you're scoring. So that, to me, is what the matchup is all about, is about the defensive containment and how they're able to counteract what Edmonton does offensively.
ESPN did a fun little piece about the players who could potentially win a gold medal and a Stanley Cup in the same cycle, in the same year. Do you have any favorites on who you think is most likely to pull that off?
Boy, wouldn't you love to say the Utah Mammoth connection, right? Man, that's a fantastic piece to think about. Boy, who would you like to see winning that? I don't know. I suppose kind of looking, and I'm looking at the article now, out of everybody that's on here, I can say I love the Tampa Bay Lightning and the way they're playing it. So Jake Gensel has a chance to be that guy. I love Dallas as well, and I think the Stars are probably the most complete team besides the Avalanche, which is why I think it's a shame that the Wild play the Avalanche in the first round. So Jake Ottinger on the Dallas Stars has that chance. Carolina, every year I want to pick against the Carolina Hurricanes. they always surprise me. I always think, boy, shouldn't their window not be as good? And maybe they're going to start a rookie in the playoffs this year in goal, in Brandon Bussey. But they've got a chance, and so that's Jacob Slavin. And me being from Buffalo, New York, Tage Thompson on the Buffalo Sabres, you never know. But honestly, I think if I'm picking a team out of the East, it's probably Tampa Bay and either Brock Nelson on the Avalanche or Jake Ottinger on the Stars out of the West.
Some reports out there saying that there was an idea floated around that maybe if the Utah Mammoth didn't end up returning to form and playing the way that they have down the stretch here, that maybe it was going to be time to make a change on the bench. And Pete DeBoer's name was floated out there. Coach Bear, I think, is in a good spot right now because of the way this team is playing. But how much credence should we be giving to those rumors in your mind?
Well, I have been shocked at the last couple of weeks, the coaching changes, both Vegas and the Islanders, two teams in the playoffs with, in Vegas's case, 8, and I think the Islanders 6 games left, fired their coaches. That is shocking and stunning. Like, that does not happen, but maybe we're entering a new NHL now. So I said on our show, actually, that came out today, I said, I don't know that any NHL coach can get comfortable because short of winning a Stanley Cup, that's nuts to me to fire your coach on the eve of the playoffs while your team's in the playoffs. So, I mean, man, I don't know. I'm still not 100% sold that Andre Tourigny is the guy to get Utah to win a Stanley Cup. And, Vegas let go of a Stanley Cup winning coach to bring someone else in. I've never been a big Pete DeBoer fan. I covered the Vegas Golden Knights while he was in Vegas. Pete's a great guy. He's very good with the media, but I just didn't like the way he was kind of running things in Vegas, especially with concern with the goaltenders. So to see him in the Islands, I'm kind of glad that choice is off the table. If they do go looking for a coach in the offseason, and right now the landscape is telling me that a lot of teams feel emboldened by these changes, and even if they went around, may go looking for a coach. I just don't think DeBoer would have been the answer. I would not have been a big fan of that.
What do you think of John Tortorella taking over Vegas, like you said, right on the eve of the playoffs?
I love Tortorella. I know people love him or hate him. I think he is refreshingly honest. Can he be a jerk? Yes. He may not give you the answer you want, but I think he knows who he is. And he knows who he is as a coach, and he is going to get down. And what he does works in the short term. Everywhere he's gone, he's been able to make it work in the short term. Honestly, if you wanted to jumpstart Vegas, he's the guy, which is a little frightening for them heading into the playoffs if they do find their momentum and their mojo. But I think it gives all of us in the West another storyline heading into the playoffs. And short-term success, yeah, this could work out real well for them. I don't know if Tortorella's in Vegas longer than 2 or 3 years, especially at his age. But, man, it's going to be fun in the meantime to just keep an eye on what he says every day at morning skate.
You and I haven't spoken since the Florida Panthers were eliminated from playoff contention. And I remember some earlier conversations, and I had them with a lot of hockey people, just like, oh, yeah, they're probably going to get it figured out. Oh, they'll get it figured out. And ultimately, they didn't get it figured out. Do you have a why?
Injuries, huge reason. Their captain and arguably their best player in Barkov never really played this year. Was hurt the whole year. That didn't help. They just never found a way to keep pucks out of the net. Sergei Bobrovsky's 38 years old now, and he's not getting any younger. And he does have an extra set of dials when it comes to turning it up in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he was supremely average. And they also battled some other injuries. Kachuk was in and out of the lineup. And it's just they never were 100% healthy. They never got consistent play this year. And I think they did get older, significantly older. And that I think this year was a very down year for Bob, and this might be it for him. There's a lot of reasons why, but the health of that club was never, ever good. Never gave him a chance right from the beginning.
This has been a basketball market a lot longer than it's been a hockey market. And in NBA basketball right now, there's this really kind of funny dynamic. interesting dynamic where there's not a lot of belief that it's going to be a team from the East that does anything when you get down to the Larry O'Brien Trophy. How big a disparity is there right now between East and West when it comes to the hunt for the Stanley Cup?
I think people in both conferences are going to make their cases for East is better, West is better. Now, I can say probably 10 years ago, you can make a very real case the West was head and shoulders above the East, and for a long time it was. And then Tampa Bay swung that pendulum back the other way, Tampa Bay and Florida. Now, I feel like it's pretty close to the middle. There are a lot of very good teams in the East, and of course, a lot of the Eastern pundits are pointing at their point totals and saying, well, look at how much better the East is than the West. To me, what that's telling me is there's just still a ton of parity on both sides. Look at how close the wild card races are. Look at how close, the difference is in the West. I would say the bottom feeders are a little further out, but I honestly believe that despite the point totals being fairly elevated in the East, I think that there's parity all across the league, and it's pretty close to the middle. But no, you're right. And look, I'm a Lakers guy. So, yes, I really do believe the West is far superior to the East in the NBA.
Do you think LeBron can carry it through in the playoffs if he has to without Austin Reeves and without Luka?
I would have said maybe without Reeves, but not without Luka. I don't think so. I'm not a LeBron guy. I've never been a LeBron guy. I was actually kind of annoyed when the Lakers picked up LeBron James because I'm like, you make up your mind. Are you a coach, a GM, or a player? Pick one, stick with it. So as a Lakers fan, I was not happy. But, there's a title in there with LeBron's name on it. I think Luka Doncic, missing him is huge for that team, unfortunately. And I don't know. I guess I'm just going to have to stick to the Stanley Cup this fall because, hey, if they want to go on a run, that'd be great, and I'll be excited, but I'm not holding my breath.
All right, last thing before I let you go. People, Utah Mammoth fans especially, are probably sick of hearing me talk about this kid, but a teenager in Macklin Celebrini scoring 100 points in that Shark sweater and the future being so incredibly bright for him. I think the team being a little bit ahead of schedule because he's on it, and him being one of only, 6 teenagers to ever do it in the NHL, score 100 points or more. Just help me characterize this accomplishment for the hockey newcomers out there.
I think we live in a world where everybody's very quick to label somebody a generational talent, right? The generational quarterback, generational point guard, what we're seeing here is probably in hindsight what will be viewed as the best player of his generation, and his accomplishment is to 100 points so quickly is phenomenal. And it's so hard to do because it's not like when I was growing up with the NHL of the 80s and 90s where they were just handing out 100-point seasons. Now, in today's game, it is harder to score. It is harder to manufacture points. To be able to do that is just phenomenal. And I think, yes, if you are a fan of Western Conference hockey and you paid even remote attention to the Sharks and Celebrini, what he has done this year is nothing short of phenomenal. It is a superstar effort. And this kid, if he continues this pace, this is Hall of Fame credential pace. And you might get a chance here early on. If you're a Mammoth fan or a fan of any other team and you're listening to this show, pay attention to the Sharks or at least Macklin Celebrini, because what he's doing, I can hang a generational talent tag on him confidently.
That's Tom Callahan at Callahan on Air. If you're not already following, that'd be a mistake. You should also check out Locked On Mammoth. Stay dialed in on everything that this Utah team is doing as they approach a playoff picture where it looks like they're going to be at least in that first wild card spot. Tom, I always appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on. I look forward to talking playoff hockey with you very soon.
Let's go, baby. The Mammoth are going to be in the playoffs. That's Tom Callahan. Second year of existence. Now, look, it's not quite as sexy as when the Golden Knights made it all the way to the playoff or all the way to the the Cup final this early, but it's still pretty incredible, especially if you've been slogging along with the Utah Jazz in these droughts. I will live by and die by my dog ownership, cat ownership analogy. The Mammoth are your pet dog. The Utah Jazz, they're your pet cat. A lot more finicky. Not as much return on investment. Harder to keep them happy. Not the Mammoth, baby. Just throw a bowl of food out there. They love you forever. Big thanks to Tom Callahan for popping on. All right. We have to address the end of an era. For the first time in a half century, Utah Gymnastics is not competing for a national championship following the regional semifinals. Or the regional finals, I should say. We'll bite down. We'll get through the pain together on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Addressing a minor controversy on the text line, by the way, in our Festival of Teas, I asked how many national championships has UCLA women's basketball won, and the correct answer is 2. The correct answer for NCAA basketball is 1. They've won 2 national championships, one predating women's basketball being in the NCAA and one with them in the NCAA. So the correct answer is either 2 or 1, depending on which lens you look at. So we're going to go with whoever got one of those correct answers in first.
Yeah, we actually have our winner. We can shout him out. It is Chad from Clinton.
Shout out to Chad. All right. You get to play Lakeside, a free round from the Festival of Teas, brought to you by the Utah Golf Association.
Your favorite golf course, right? Lakeside?
You won't see me playing anywhere else.
With your fast face.
Got a fast face. Ping G440X. Come on, bud.
Come on now.
You know the rules. All right. I don't know how to approach this with the in the best way, because while I consider myself a big fan of Utah gymnastics, I'm not a big fan of Utah gymnastics like some of you out there listening are, where I go to every home meet, where I'm following everything that they do away from the home floor. I'm not in principle, we are all Red Rock supporters, but then there are the hardcore Red Rock supporters who maybe travel to their away meets, things like that. And I want to do justice to those folks, because it's a dark day for you. For the first time in 49 years, Utah women's gymnastics will not be competing at the national final. They did not advance out of the regional following an epic run by, of all teams, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota came ready to compete. They got it done. Utah battled. Unfortunately, came up just a few hundredths short and are not able to compete for the first time in 49 years for a national championship. They're still your Big 12 gymnastics champions. The program is still in a really good place. You've got a bunch of strong young competitors that are going to be presumably a foundation for you moving forward. You have 3 women competing at nationals in individual events. Avery Neff is going to be there, Anna Padaroriou, and who am I missing?
Ella Zerbis.
Ella Zerbis.
Which, for a team that collectively misses nationals, I feel like 3 is on the higher end of individuals who move on to nationals. So, I mean, that should tell you at least about the talent that this year's squad had. Unfortunately, they come up a little bit short.
And also, there's a structural conversation to be had here. Remember when, college football and college sports got rid of divisions? And remember how the NBA, and they're just like, we're just taking the top 8. You could make the case that they would be better in college gymnastics to do the same thing. If that were the case, Utah did not advance out of its regional final, but Arkansas and Stanford, who scored lower than Utah did, they do advance, and they do get to go compete at nationals without the same strength of scores as this Utah gymnastics team, just because of who they were up against in the other regional. And then I've read what you've read. The conversation is out there. Well, hey, I mean, that's why every meet during the season matters. And we talked about this with Carly Dockendorf when she joined us last week. It was not throughout the course of the regular season. It was not quite the same level of powerhouse Utah gymnastics team that a lot of people were accustomed to. Excellent, yes. Big 12 champions, yes. Dominant in a way that during the regular season with the new scoring and things like that, it was not going to come back to bite you. Well, unfortunately, not the case. Who you go up against, your placement, all that stuff is affected by your scores throughout the season, the average of your scores at your home meets, and that's how you get your NQS. And unfortunately, Utah ended up where they ended up because they weren't quite as formidable in every single meet throughout the season as we've grown accustomed to them being. And that you just you make assumptions and you think everything's going to be the way that they've always been, because for 49 plus years now, they've been that way. Well, 2026 is when that streak comes to an end, and all good things must. So shout out to the Red Rocks. Still love you, still support you. Morgan Scally, the head football coach at the University of Utah, he had some kind words, so wants to make sure that that community remains strong up there. But a tough thing to swallow for hardcore Red Rocks fans, that 5 decades of history come to an end this year.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable, too, just because of the tradition of success. And let's be clear, this is still objectively a very successful season, not to the standard, making it to nationals for 50 years, basically, in a row of the Red Rocks. But, you made it into the NCAAs for the 50-year streak predates NCAA. So for another 45 or whatever years in a row, right? But yeah, I feel like for you and I, even who don't necessarily follow the program all that closely, let alone the really diehard fans who see every meet or see a bunch of meets a year, it's just jarring to go, oh my gosh, they're not in nationals. But still a great foundation, like you talked about. Three gymnasts going in to compete at nationals individually. One of those, your best competitor all year, Avery Neff, is only a sophomore. Lots of reason to believe that they can get back as early as next year to that national championship contention standard that we've had here forever at the University of Utah Red Rocks.
I teased this a little bit earlier, and then I never delivered on the tease. That's bad radio. That's my fault, so I'll do it now. If you're a Ravens fan, there's some good news for you. You have a new coach, Jesse Minter, right? Well, their off-season workout program, voluntary workouts, began today in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson has decided to attend. He doesn't always do that for voluntary off-season workouts, but Jesse Minter talked about how important it was that Lamar Jackson get as much work as he possibly can in with his new offensive coordinator. Declan Doyle is the name of that offensive coordinator who's taking on the job for the first time. So Lamar Jackson, perhaps renewed vigor and interest in offseason. I mean, he doesn't have to be there for another month, and he's already showed up. So if you're a Ravens fan, it's probably exciting. Also, Minter was asked about whether or not Lamar Jackson was expected at these last week, and he would not give an answer. So maybe he didn't know that Lamar Jackson had planned on doing this. In other NFL news, all-pro defensive tackle, Giants' best player in a lot of people's minds, Dexter Lawrence, has requested a trade. And look, that's a big-time bummer if you're a Giants fan, because there's starting to be some glimmers of hope around the offense, right? A healthy Cam Scattaboo. You got your quarterback of the future potentially in Jackson Dart. Dexter Lawrence is the foundational piece of your interior defensive line, and Dexter Lawrence wants out. He was a first-round pick in the 2019 draft. He's made the Pro Bowl 3 times. He was second-team All-Pro twice. He does not want to play out the third year of a 4-year, $90 million deal that he signed in 2023. Here's the thing. Dexter Lawrence is in a position now where he can probably do things like this. But, man, will you look back, if you don't end up in the right place, will you look back and be like, I don't have a ton of confidence in the Giants, period. End of story. as an organization. But John Harbaugh kind of knows what he's doing. John Harbaugh is a good coach. Can John Harbaugh keep his fastball with these young guys that are from a completely different generation of personality and player? I guess we don't know that yet. You're leaving the organization with this trade demand, unless you're just using it for leverage, at, in my opinion, a time when it's finally maybe worth staying in New York. If he had made this demand 2 or 3 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, dude, get out of there. I think the Giants are going to round into an era where they're at least competitive. They're at least good. The Commanders haven't capitalized on their growth or their potential growth as of yet. The Cowboys are going to remain the Cowboys in your division. So, can you grow into something that'll beat the Eagles? Maybe. And you're leaving now? Wouldn't be me. Couldn't be me. Also, basically everything that Dexter Lawrence does couldn't be me because, he's good at this. So, he wanted a raise 1 year ago, but they wouldn't give him one. They added $3 million worth of incentives, but he had 3 years left on the deal. So don't sign deals if you don't intend on playing at least out until the final year of the contract. If your intention as a professional athlete is to play the first year under the new terms, maybe the second year under the new terms, and then immediately get back to, hey, I need more money, not a good look.
You remember when T.O. made such huge waves? Completely different situation, but he played the same kind of game right after the first year with the Eagles, go to the Super Bowl. He has an incredible game on one leg basically and lost to the Patriots, and then he's doing push-ups saying, "Hey, you didn't pay me enough." It's like, well, you just signed a 7-year deal. Like, if you didn't think it was enough, you shouldn't have signed the deal.
Why are you doing push-ups at a driveway? Stand up and talk to us. Yeah, I don't know, man. Again, it's hard to – the right thing to do is to say, I have no idea how these things work because we don't, in the real world, get to judge our decision-making abilities in these contexts. I don't know anyone in a normal job who's ever had this kind of leverage or felt they had this kind of leverage where they were still multiple years left on a contract and they're just like, hey, new contract, give it to me. In sports and entertainment, yeah, I mean, things are, they move fast. Maybe if you're like some highfalutin computer programmer and you figure out something crazy for AI now, maybe you can walk in and just be like, hey, if you don't give me a new contract, I'm leaving. But we don't get to do this. If you're working at the post office right now, you don't get to do this.
See how many letters I mailed today? Come on now.
Hey.
Delivered today, I should say.
Guess what? I'm going to go work for the Canadian Postal Service. You can't. That's not how it works.
All right, fine. The German Post.
Puerto Rican. Ooh, maybe. Maybe you can do that one. Anyway. Dexter Lawrence wants out. Weird timing, if you're asking me, Dexter. And I know he listens to the show, so maybe he'll call in and tell us why. We've got some tickets to give away, topical trivia, 2 tickets to Muse coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater August 20th. Perhaps a little conversation with Spence Checketts as well. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. Wrap it up next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll wrap it up with some crosstalk if Spence is poking his head in the building here. Right now, 2 tickets to Muse up for grabs. August 20th at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. The University of Michigan is knocking on the door of being a record-setting, most dominant team in the history of the NCAA tournament. 20-plus points per game they are winning these games by, on their way to, potentially tonight, a national championship. But for now, they have not completed that task. Who currently holds the record for the most dominant run to a national championship? We talked about this earlier in the show. What college basketball program currently holds the honor and distinction of being the most dominant single-year champion, meaning they dominated their tournament games by the largest average margin of victory? 877-353-0700. If you missed any part of the show today or any part of any day, you can find it at ESPN700sports.com. You can go to the ESPN 700 app. You can find our on-demand section. You can tell your smart speakers to play ESPN 700. You can watch us on YouTube. We're coming at you from every direction here on the Sean O'Connell Show and on The Drive with Spence Checketts, which is coming up shortly. National championship game tonight. You're looking for a place to watch it, 1717 South Main. UConn, Michigan. UConn in the national championship game for the third time in 4 years. We probably too often in sports look for dynasties. We talk about dynasties too much. We want there to be another UCLA basketball in college sports from back in the early days. Harder than it ever was to be a dynasty, right? And even the most impressive and incredible dynasties of modern sport usually have this period where they stay hyper relevant for, the better part of a decade. They're not winning 4, 5, and 6 championships in a row. Most times you're not even winning 3. But if you're in that hunt, if you're there, in the case of UConn, 3 years out of 4, you're flirting with dynasty for me. I think we have to redefine the word on some level because of the nature of things now in college sports, because of the turnover, because of the rapidity with which your competition shifts and the ground on which you stand changes. If you're there in the conversation, if you're almost a title challenger, if you're almost a title winner, 3 years out of 4, 4 years out of 5, 6 years out of 10, that's good enough for me. If UConn wins tonight against Michigan, and I'm a Husky fan, I'm a Husky coach, I'm a Husky player, I'm starting to put dynasty next to my program's name just because you can't expect a decade anymore. Coaches don't stay as long. Players are off into the transfer portal, whatever. So will we see UConn continue to stay the case? Will we see Michigan on top of the college basketball world? And if they do win it, 20 years from now, will we still be saying like, hey, remember that Fab 5 Michigan team? Or will we say, what about that 2026 squad that won every damn tournament game by 23 points? The Drive with Spence Checketts is up next. Spence is here in studio with me. Hi, Spence.
Fab 5 never even won a national championship.
Correct.
Right? Last time Michigan won it was 89. Your boy Rumeal Robinson, you remember that team? Glenn Rice?
Glenn Rice.
Yeah.
Is what I remember off that team.
Yeah, hell of a player.
What my 6-year-old self remembers from that team. Let me ask you this.
Yep.
Did you ever own or know people who owned or be around people who owned the old Bugs Bunny and Tasmanian Devil crisscross?
Was it Jump?
Jump.
Chris
Daddy
Ross?
Mac will make you
Don't
jump.
know the words.
Mac Daddy make you.
Oh my gosh.
That's it. That's the whole thing.
It was a great song back in the day. It was everywhere. Those two kids had to be 15 or 16 years old, right?
Yeah, they were. They were like pubescent kids who probably got auto-tuned and just were like, hey, do something we've never seen before.
So are you talking about the T-shirts they would wear? Would they wear the Bugs Bunny T-shirts?
I don't know why this was a design choice. Okay, I'm going to pull this up for you. The Willow Canyon Elementary, every kid had one of these.
I've never seen that before.
You've never seen that?
I haven't. It's a good-looking sweatshirt, though.
That's why I bring it up, because this is what I think of when I think of the Fab Five team. Michigan was a cultural phenomenon.
They were, yeah.
And even out here in Sandy, Utah,
everywhere, dude.
Kids were just like, yeah, Michigan. Yeah. And weirdly enough, because that was the age demographic I was in right now, like you could get away with, well, also not just Crisscross and not just Michigan, but also Bugs Bunny and Taz.
Interesting. Well, I learned something new today. When I think of the Fab Five cultural effect, number one, black ankle socks, which, by the way, I still wear. I'm wearing them right now.
Okay.
It's all I wear. And the baggy jeans. I loved Jalen Rose as a college player. Chris Webber, Ray Jackson, Jimmy King, Juwan Howard. That team was really fun to watch. Never won a natty. Ran up against those really good Duke teams. But, yeah, I mean, they were one of those cultural phenomenons, to your point, that crossed over everywhere.
And they're remembered as though they did win a national championship, right?
Well, Weber called the timeout. Carolina, Eric Montross.
Yeah, but it's like you don't talk about that Carolina team.
Right.
You don't reference them by some title.
Yeah.
You do the Fab Five.
Yeah.
It's strange. And this Michigan team, I don't know why I'm so fixated on this. This Michigan team, if they somehow find a way to win by 20-plus tonight, they're going to go down as one of the three most dominant champions in the history of college basketball, and we won't remember them the same way probably because we're in a new era now where there's just less attachment to any cool thing that's happening. We're so distracted.
Exactly, because there's so many things going on everywhere in a way that there wasn't back then. I have this debate with a buddy of mine. I love One Shining Moment. I love the song at the end of the tournament, and he hates it. So I text him at the end of the tournament, hey, you sitting down ready for One Shining Moment?
Okay.
And the One Shining Moment featuring the Fab Five as freshmen was an embodiment of what you're talking about. Because if you go back and watch that, the majority of it was them, and they didn't win it. But it's smart television executives understanding what sells because they were brash, they were young, they were cool. And by the way, I just love the Michigan jerseys. I love the Michigan colors. Witt's decked out in Jordan brand now, and we got to deal with Under Armour up here. Like, it's a cool brand. It just is.
It's going to make me – I have not yet seen Witt's feet since he has taken the Michigan job.
Wait, why are we focusing on his feet?
Because when Kyle Whittingham comes out and is wearing, like, some Jordan 4s,
I'm
going to throw up.
Yeah, because they're going to look cool on him.
Because they're going to look cool. He's going to look so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, damn it. Because with Under Armour, they had to find like the one signature Tom Brady Under Armour shoe that didn't look like an absolute visual abomination.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that he could wear to like the Pac-12 and Big 12 media days, so he didn't look like a freaking yahoo.
Can we get how long is the Under Armour deal? Is it still a couple of years?
Hold on. It's too long.
Yeah, can we Dexter Lawrence our way out of the contract now? Can we demand a trade to Jordan Brand, please?
Sir, you have 6 more years on this thing. No, I want out now.
Can we be honest? Like, Utah has the potential to have really cool gear, but when's the last time you saw a Ute sweatshirt? You're like, I need that.
Well, I still feel that way, but because of the drum and feather.
Sure.
Not because of the Under Armour.
There's some unlocked potential here, okay? Under Armour themselves, they're kind of like, they thought they were going to be something that they're not.
I still have a pretty old, it's a dry fit black crew neck sweatshirt with the red drum and feather on it.
Okay.
And it's from like 2002, so there's a swoosh.
Oh, okay.
And I wear it, and people are like, what the heck? Where'd you get that?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's vintage at this point.
Yeah. I wonder how Kyle is digesting this NCAA tournament run. Michigan has the endowment where they expect you to do what the basketball team's doing. Mm-hmm. So if you're the football coach, are you cheering for the basketball team to win?
You better be.
Or do you not want that on your shoulders?
I don't think that. I think that is a man that is not affected by external pressures in the slightest.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably correct. But you got me on the Fab Five tip now, because it was just this thing. No matter where you were, and especially if you played basketball, it's the Jordan effect. Mm-hmm. You know, like we all wanted to be like Mike. It was the name of the commercial. It was the name of the advertising campaign. Be like Mike. There were the cool videos. There's McDonald's. There's Gatorade. And I am uniquely qualified to hate Michael Jordan with Jazz Knicks in my background. You couldn't. You know, and every once in a while, there's an athlete or a trend that just, I feel like Jeter was like that in baseball. So many people hate the Yankees, but I think it was really hard to hate Derek Jeter. Football equivalent, Brady's good, but he's a Magoo. You can tell me he's awesome. Don't tell me he's cool.
It's very easy for me to hate Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Like, I respect him.
Yeah, it's hard not
because
to.
I respect the football version of him because, wow, he was so good for so long. But he's pretty hateable.
The Niners were pretty cool with Montana and Rice. The Bears.
The coolest ever.
Yeah, the 1985 Bears, Walter Payton, the fridge, McMahon, sunglasses. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting whenever a athlete or a team just transcends all the things we typically talk about, which usually is winning and losing. And obviously the Niners and the Bears won Super Bowls, but the Michigan example, average college basketball fans be like, yeah, they won a couple of natties, right? I'm like, nope.
No, they don't.
They didn't win one.
And it's weird.
They were a 6 seed.
There's those things, even though we have more access to whatever we want to see now, those things that will remain in our mind and evoke pictures of Bugs Bunny for folks, they're fewer and further between, because back in those days, all of your exposure to all this stuff was funneled through the same thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You could see it on television. In my case, you couldn't even see it on cable television. We didn't have it. Mm-hmm. You see it on network television, and that's where you get it. And now it's like, I think that the U.S. hockey gold medal is the closest I can, like, we're going to remember what we were doing, where we were, who we were watching it with, hopefully, maybe, right? But you might have been watching it on your phone while you were it's not the same as it used to be, where you can smell the food you were eating and stuff like that. So those things are fewer and further between than they used to be. And this Michigan team, like, maybe when it's all said and done tonight, will deserve to be remembered that way. Yeah, but probably won't be.
Yeah, and I look, I don't think they're going to win by 20 because UConn makes every game a rock fight. But this is a tough task for UConn. Even if the Lundenburg kid has a bum ankle, that's a good basketball team. And, you know, they had some injury issues early on. I thought they were the most vulnerable 1 seed, but they've been incredibly impressive. I'm pulling for UConn. I'd like to see that happen. But I don't know, man. This feels like a really tough task when it comes to the way Michigan has played throughout the course of the tournament. And the other thing about stuff that grabs our attention now is even if you try to stay on your social media feed about what you want to hear about, you're inevitably inundated by the other things that have gone viral. The algorithms just feed it to you. So it's like, all right, I want to watch a video about Utah football. Oh, okay, now I need to learn who the Haktua girl is because suddenly she's everywhere. It's like, what's going on? It's just like a weird thing, what grabs our attention.
Damn you algorithms.
Oh, Taylor Frankie Paul is leaving the Mormon church. Sweet. Let me read about that today.
I saw a really awesome tweet regarding that, where it was one of the Ute fan accounts was just like, I've been to California many times for a visit. I want to make an announcement that I'm moving out of the state of California.
Yeah.
With, of course, the suggestion being like, I mean, her behavior for the last decade plus has indicated she's not really been in the Mormon church.
Hasn't been conducive to the standards, shall we say?
That's a different show.
But it underscores the point. Yeah. I don't give a rip who Taylor Frankie Paul is. I never wanted to know who this person was. I don't care what she does with her personal life. Get off my feed. I'm not looking it up. It's just fed to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. Oh. Proximity minds.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. But we'll talk sports today.
Stay tuned on the drive. Spence is going to tell you why the presidential executive order will save college sports.
I will do that coming up next.
Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.